Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noise Era, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and I have titled this episode, The Fog of War, COVID Resistance, and Global Realignment. We have a lot of different things to talk about with you guys. How the U.S. is on essentially the brink of a terrible civil war. You've got the Washington Post saying that millions of white Republican Americans need to be deprogrammed and reprogrammed. You've got Hank Aaron dying from the COVID-19 vaccine. Bill Gates shocked that people caught on to his trail regarding COVID, as well as President Xi Jinping of China saying that we need to get rid of our ideological biases. We need to come together for peace. This is a communist president, a communist dictator attending the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, saying that we need to get rid of our biases after infecting the world with COVID. Yeah, we have a very, very interesting episode lined up for you guys. Yeah. A few quick updates, and then I'll switch into the next scene, and we'll get started. Earlier today, I did a pretty cool thingy. I would definitely hope you guys check it out. On our Telegram channel, we were able to simulcast. I was able to use the software that we are using right now to provide you guys with these weekly video podcast episodes and audio versions of the show. I was able to integrate Telegram into the software that we are using and have a live chat through Telegram that has been recorded. I'll put that in the description bar below so you can listen to it. It's a quick 47-minute transmission. I'm not quite sure what to call it, but it's a pre-show breakdown. And so we might not use it for every pre-show. We might use it for emergency transmissions and things like this. But what this is me telling you guys that we are beginning to adopt new features and new configurations to provide you guys with the information, right? We don't just sit up over here and waste time. Like this is definitely not the time to do it. I address all that and more in the description bar or in the pre-show breakdown. I would definitely recommend you guys to check it out. Because on top of that, we also have the mini cast that we did earlier this week featuring guests. Will America end in 2021? We are truly trying to provide information that is relevant. We are truly trying to figure out a different way to deliver the content, interact with the audience, and at the same time amplify and expand the message. Again, this is all in part due to your guys' continued support, your guys' continued prayers of all the things that we do. And so this is where we're at. Like I said, I'll put that in the description bar below. You might not think it's a big deal, but to me, I think that is a pretty big deal. It's a different configuration, like Instagram Live, where we're able to pull on different guests and then I ramble in between. We won't have to do that with Telegram, right? You're already in the chat, so you're able to engage in the discussion. And if you don't feel like you have anything to say, you don't have to. It literally is super cool. I think we will be doing something like that going forward into the future. We will be simulcasting next week's Instagram Live. That way we can do it. But this is it, man. I'm super cool about that. And if you guys have any more questions, you can DM me, you can email me. That's definitely what I prefer. I'll put all that information in the description bar below. And with that said, let's start the show. So this is season 11, episode 2. The Fog of War. Let me just give you like a quick gestalt, like a run through of what we're going to be talking about, right? I think that encapsulates it. The DHS has issued a new terror advisory warning on, quote, domestic violent extremists who, quote, object to presidential transition. So simply because you do not agree with the presidential outcome, you are now considered a domestic terrorist. Welcome to the club. Because being considered a conspiracy theorist to the DHS is considered like domestic extremism. Now, we covered that last year. But what's happening, and we'll talk more about this in the third segment, but what's happening right now is the Overton window is expanding. they're beginning to identify and categorize different threats, right? We'll get into this more when we talk about Andy No and how he's essentially fleeing the country, largely in part due to the threats that he's received working with Antifa, or at least uncovering the works of Antifa. I didn't get around to posting it, but Enrique Tarrio of the Proud Boys is also popped up on the radar. And I have some theories regarding all that, but this is the fog of war. Now that Trump is out of office, we're going to begin to see some pretty crazy things. You're going to see the leadership of the rebellion, of the American resistance, either embattled by lawsuits, thrown in prison and not coming out, captured, misinformed. Like, you're going to see a lot of crazy things happen, because the sad part is, and if I do like a separate transmission on HR1, the sad part is they have literally begun to declare war against the very population they are meant to protect. We talked about this last week with former CIA Director John Brennan, and how he had classified nativists, libertarians, religious extremists, things like this, as domestic terrorists. And so that's very dangerous when you're crossing those type of lines, calling people domestic terrorists who have ideologies that you don't agree with. So this is where we're going in 2020. This is I guess you could say this is Biden's America. I'm not sure what you would say, but it does, again, just highlight where we are in history, what's going on, and why we sometimes have to keep our heads on a swivel. I'll say this, and I'll start getting into the topics, or I'll get into these articles with you guys. You may have noticed, again, some of the content and some of my rhetoric has changed simply because of, again, the time frame that we've entered into, some of the conversations I'm privy to, some of the information that I'm able to give out that doesn't get anyone in trouble, and more. And this is just where we're going. This is life until we begin to do different things. So let's go ahead and start getting into these topics. Let's go ahead and start pulling up articles. Let's go ahead and start starting this show for you good people. Yep, right here. Let's go ahead and get that up. It comes from Nima Harris. They put this up January 25th. USA is on the brink of a terrible civil war. Yeah, a terrible, terrible civil war. It says 328 million Americans should be prepared for a, quote, terrible civil war in the USA, according to the hedge fund billionaire Ray Dalio. Quote, I believe we are on the brink of a terrible civil war, the Bridgewater Associates founder wrote in a series of Twitter posts. Quote, we are at an inflection point between entering a type of hell of fighting or pulling back to work together for peace and prosperity, he added. Quote, our country is still at a terrible financial state and terribly divided. Dalio's dire warning comes as conservatives in America face unprecedented censorship and as the elites continue to consolidate wealth and power amid a pandemic-induced economic crisis. BusinessInsider.com reports that this was not the first time Dalio has warned that the U.S. could fall into a kind of civil war if political and wealth gaps aren't addressed. Now, before I continue on, I want to point you guys in the direction of our Telegram channel. Because on our Telegram channel, we put up a PDF called, I just called it the secession theory. And it was something that I had found while skulking around for information, like I like to do. And what it essentially is a little map that shows all of the different, it shows all the different states kind of in different districts. And I had briefly went over this on the pre-show breakdown, and I'll talk more about it in the third segment, but you guys can find it here. But what it talks about is how, Washington, Oregon, and California are in their own union. You've got Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico in their own union. And then the Mississippi River Valley, which is all of these massive states coming together, like Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Montana. They call it the red zone because it's the Mississippi River Valley. It says there are really three sections to talk about here. Every state from Texas to West Virginia is safe to succeed. Every state from Nebraska to Northwood would go second. And finally, Alberta would lead the way in leaving Canada. Together, they would form a formidable nation much stronger than the coasts combined. And then it talks about the yellow, the free West. That's where we're at, thank God. But we'll talk more about that in the third segment. But this is the Civil War. You've already got people fleeing California. You've already got people fleeing New York. You've also got people fleeing Guatemala and Mexico and all kinds of other stuff. But this is the geopolitical restructuring that's taking place. Again, the geopolitical, not geographical, geopolitical. They're moving because of their values. Let's get back into this article talking about, again, how we are on a powder keg, how we are on the brink. It says he has often warned that a lack of opportunity, income divides, and underinvestment in education could cause irreversible damage. Now, we're not talking about the Flint water crisis, where people who have been exposed to lead in their water have developed Legionnaire's disease, scabs on their skin, and declining IQ levels. No, what we're essentially talking about right here is the Zebellion. And again, this is something I would have to point you guys in the direction of, where the Pentagon has essentially wargamed that for the next 5 years, we're going to begin to see more of these secessionary movements because they will be driven by lack of opportunity, income divides, underinvestments, both in education and more, because they will see no future, no prospect in this collapsing society. They will break off and do other things. We are truly entering into the fourth turning and a massive change, man. Like, this is why you hear me trying to describe it in so many different ways. But let me get back into this article. It says, quote, I've studied the last 500 years of history and cycles, large wealth gaps and large value gaps at the same time that there's a lot of debt and there's a lot of economic downturn produces conflict and vulnerability, he told CNN's Poppy Harlow in an interview aired last month. Dalio also likened the recent exodus of CEOs and companies from business hubs like New York and San Francisco to Florida and Texas as a, quote, sort of civil war. We are seeing a form of civil war. People are leaving to go from one place to another, partially for taxes, but also partially for other reasons, he said in December. Quote, the worst alternative is that one side or the other says, quote, this isn't my country anymore, this isn't my population. On Sunday, Dalio said both Democrats and Republicans need to bring about change. Quote, good words and spirit aren't enough, he wrote. Quote, people will have to agree on both how to grow the pie and how to divide it. That will require revolutionary change. Now, I've got to ask the question of, are we beginning to see the creation of the uniparty? Right? Democrats work together with these Republicans. Are we seeing the creation of the uniparty? This is the fog of war. We're already seeing some of the chaos, and so we're supposed to work with things like this. We're supposed to work with Antifa descending on Tacoma, Washington. Yeah. Now I'm being a little crazy, but at the same time, some of this is true. I say this all the time, that we exist because both Democrats and Republicans failed us. And to a degree, I need to address why I say, like, I don't think previous generations failed us, but you get what I'm saying. We exist because we need to do something different. And that's already what you're beginning to see right here. People are generally upset. You've got people thinking that, like, I'll do another transmission on Biden voter regret and how that will literally lead towards more of this. People will be upset. We already have people losing their jobs. I went to sleep the other night putting up a post of a pipeline worker who literally lost his job in the stroke of a pen after buying a new car on a 6-year lease, 6-year program, 6-year plan. And he's like, I can't even pay my mortgage. He's like, I got to get rid of the car. I don't even know if I'll be able to pay my mortgage. And this is just within a couple weeks of Biden being in office. But you're wondering, why are we playing the Antifa videos? Because look at what they're doing. Look at what happened all last year. We saw them attack both urban communities, city centers, streets, blocks, marching. This is not good for the economy. This is not good for our future. This is what happens whenever people move into these populated centers. They lose their rights. But that's, again, some of the theory. Some people are saying that because these strongholds are where they are, let them collapse. And I asked this before. When was the last time you've seen a new city? We're seeing a lot of crazy things go on right now, guys. So let me read a little bit of this, and then I'll play a quick clip for you guys. It's of Andy No saying that he's going to flee the country because of that right here, because of Antifa descending on Tacoma, Washington, smashing windows and setting fires. This is an article that comes from Zachary Streiber. They put this up January 25th, comes from the Epoch Times. It says Antifa activists on Sunday night traveled to Tacoma, Washington to violently demonstrate after a police officer struck at least one person the previous evening. Video footage and photographers showed activists with the far-left anarcho-communist network setting fires in the street and smashing windows at businesses in Tacoma, a town of about 212,000, approximately 30 miles southwest of Seattle. Pegged at over 100, the crowd marched around the downtown area. Police officers eventually responded after demonstrators began breaking windows. At least one Antifa flag was spotted in the crowd, and members donned the distinctive all-black clothing the network is known for. A number carried black umbrellas, which Antifa uses to spar with police officers. They actually use it to fire back the tear gas. It says, quote, "No cops, no prisons, total abolition," the crowd chanted. The chant is common for Antifa, which opposes many aspects of the criminal justice system. There were also chants of, quote, "Black Lives Matter" and "Free them all," as the crowd passed by the Pierce County Jail. So there you have it. There you have it. We're going to bash your windows. We don't like what you say. You're the terrorist. How dare you? You see the narrative that they're painting? You see how this is gaslighting free-thinking, decent people into doing crazy and radical things because we are not like these people. Let me pull up this quick clip for you guys. This is of conservative journalist Andy No fleeing the country after death threats from Antifa. Yeah, and I'll have a statement for that right afterwards. But it trips me out. It legitimately trips me out seeing these type of things take place. But here is Andy No, and then we'll continue on from there.
Your new book called Unmasked. Antifa's radical plan to destroy democracy. Well, nobody knows more about that than you. Tell us about the book, Andy.
The book is an expose on Antifa's ideology, history, and most crucially, how they organize, how they get funding. And it also chronicles the events of 2020. My hometown, Portland, Oregon, is the epicenter of American Antifa, and it was at that for more than 120 days, night after night. So for all the politicians on the left who have been condemning what happened on the 6th of January in the Capitol, which should be condemned, they were at best silent last year when my city was literally under siege. And at worst, they actually promoted some of the crowdfunding campaigns to get some of these accused rioters back out on the streets.
And Andy, you've had to flee Portland. You're in London and had to flee Portland because it's too dangerous for you. Tell us.
Yeah, for a number of months now, there's just been increasing threats of violence against me, promises by Antifa extremists to kill me. And all of those threats were reported to authorities. And even when I provided names of some of the suspects, nothing was done. So it's temporarily having to leave the country home that settled my parents, who came there as political refugees.
Rita.
Yeah, you've turned into a political refugee yourself, having to flee your home.
Your new book is called Unmasked: Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy.
To destroy democracy. Yeah, to destroy democracy. A political refugee now. Think about that. I might end up becoming the same. A political refugee having to flee the country because of death threats. Oh, but Trump's the dictator. Oh, but these white supremacists. Oh, the crazy thing is this is the clown world again that we've entered into, right? This is the clown world that people are trying to make sense. People who are trying to be law-abiding, free-thinking, sovereign individuals who don't want to go along with any of the nonsense are being chased out of the country, while you have radicals and extremists filling the vacuum. I'm telling you, this is why we're going to begin to have to escalate in order to neutralize. We either escalate to neutralize, or we get out the way. We exit, period. Because that's these people's plan. You have to understand that. You've got to understand that. Hey, check this out right here. Tulsi Gabbard asks Joe Biden, have you declared martial law? This is an article that comes from Paul Joseph Watson over there, Summit.News. They put this up January 25th. Quote, what is it that they are trying to accomplish by creating an enduring presence? Let's play a little bit of this clip and then we'll continue.
And walk away and forget. Unfortunately, I've seen this happen as well in some of my deployments. I've seen it too many times where we have troops deployed, lives on the line in there, and then you have politicians drop in for a few hours, take a picture, smile, shake a few hands, and go back and don't actually do anything to address the reason. Hey, why are our troops deployed overseas? Are we taking care of them when they come home? And are honoring the great service and sacrifice that they and their family members are providing to our country? On the National Guard, though, in our nation's capital, I read something as well that I think everyone would find disturbing, that not only were 25,000 deployed on Inauguration Day, militarizing our nation's capital, but even as about half of that number are heading home, the officials in Washington are saying that they plan to keep an enduring presence of thousands of National Guardsmen.
Of thousands of National Guards. I'll play a quick clip afterwards where she calls out Adam Schiff, John Brennan, and more. But let's get into this article right here. Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard asks Joe Biden if he had declared martial law after it was revealed that thousands of troops stationed in the Capitol will remain there until March. As we highlighted earlier, at least 5,000 National Guard soldiers will remain in D.C. until the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump is completed, a process which won't be completed or concluded for at least 6 weeks. Quote, President Joe Biden, have you declared martial law? Because that is what it's starting to look and feel like. Let our troops get back home to their families, Gabbard tweeted. During an appearance on Fox News, Gabbard was asked if it was justified to have so many troop guards the Capitol building, given that there was absolutely no unrest during or after Biden's inauguration. And so the idea behind having the there is to get you used to it the same way they got you used to wearing masks. That's the idea. Yeah, no. We have now entered into martial law. That is the sad part, and that's why they're trying to cut down communications. That's why they're doing all the things that they're doing. That is the truth of the matter. At the end of the day, is that I would say that we are in martial law, and they're going to get you used to it. I told you guys just last week in in my hometown, the National Guard was helping deploy some of these vaccines. Some of the conversations I'm privy to have people asking the question, is Biden connected to Operation Warp Speed, or is that simply something the military is going to take over? Right? So there's a lot of different things happening in the wind right now, but this should really tell you, again, the fog of war, the time frame that we've entered into, the wheelhouse that they've thrown us in. And it does worry me. All of this stuff trips me out. I mean, how could you not be worried about troops on the street carrying vaccines? One of them's got your name on it, and they're calling you a domestic terrorist if you don't want to listen to Joe Biden. It's like, what? This is clown world. But anyway, here's some quick logic. Tulsi Gabbard came out saying that big tech Adam Schiff, and John Brennan are more dangerous than the Capitol rioters. Let's play this, and then we'll get back into this.
The mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th to try to stop Congress from carrying out its constitutional responsibilities were behaving like domestic enemies of our country. But let's be clear. John Brennan's, Adam Schiff's, and oligarchs in big tech who are trying to undermine our constitutionally protected rights and turn our country into a police state with KGB-style surveillance are also domestic enemies and much more powerful and therefore dangerous than the mob that stormed the Capitol. Now, John Brennan said,
"So I know looking forward that the members of the Biden team who have been nominated or have been appointed are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas, where they germinate in different parts of the country and they gain strength, and it brings together an unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians."
Now, President Biden, I call upon you and all members of Congress from both parties to denounce these efforts by the likes of Brennan and others to take away our civil liberties that are endowed to us by our Creator and guaranteed in our Constitution. If you don't stand up to these people now, then our country will be in great peril. The mob.
Tulsi Gabbard. Now, what would happen if we had a nation full of politicians that treated us like we had common sense like that? I mean, my God, how refreshing is it to hear common sense? Kind of crazy to think that that's where we're at now, to where the only thing standing between these power-hungry, mad people is common sense that you see them ignoring. It's kind of crazy to think about it like that. But before I get back into this, domestic terrorists, Andy No being chased out of here by Antifa, things like this. This is again what I was saying. I had wanted to address it with the Enrique Tarrio Proud Boy thing. They are beginning to demonize, attack, isolate, and categorize their threats. Like I left off last week talking about that, how now you have people in positions of power who shouldn't have power. You see, these people have dug their way into the system and become embedded, and now they're targeting their opposition. That's why this is not a normal false flag. This isn't the normal political discourse. Like, they're taking kinetic action against people based on their political views. This is what, again, I mean by ideological adaptation, where they're externalizing the hierarchy, forcing us to either convert or kill us. It's very dangerous, because if you follow the trajectory of this type of rhetoric, it is very, very dangerous. They are robbing you, again, of your rights. They are robbing you of your individuality, of your sovereignty, and they're saying, you need to join us. You're not allowed to have any other viewpoints. You see. Another article up for you guys. It trips me out. Again, the wording of the things that are coming out right now. What is being allowed to be published, what is allowed to be discussed on the public. Like, it's not even a public. These are closed doors conversations that they're having, and they're leaking out to the public. Right here, Washington Post published his article stating that millions of, quote, white Republican Americans need to be deprogrammed and reprogrammed. This is an article that comes from Jeffrey Greider of Valley Inn Begins. They put this up January 28th. And before I get into this, guys, think about what I just said. Trump supporters, essentially, white Republican Americans, need to be deprogrammed and then reprogrammed. So Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. What is Jeff Bezos doing telling white Republican Americans that they need to be programmed and reprogrammed? And again, did Alexander write this? So, here's the crazy thing. It sounds like I'm a white supremacy, sympathizer, a race traitor, or any of this, when that's definitely not the case at all, dude. They come for these white folks. They already got the black folks who They already got the black folks. They come after these white folks. It's going to be brown folks next, and then yellow folks. And I'm not trying to be racist. I'm being honest. We should not want to see any one of our fellow human beings being first mind controlled, brainwashed, and programmed in the first place, deprogrammed, and then reprogrammed. Because who's doing all of the programming in the first place? This is crazy. And we played this for you just this week. But now it's coming out there, right? You're not allowed to have a viewpoint. You're not allowed to think. You'll become a thought criminal. This comes from Breitbart News. It says that the essay titled, quote, "Why is it so hard to deprogram Trumpian conspiracy theorists?" depicts millions of Trump supporters as so devoted to, quote, dangerous lunacy that nearly all hope is lost of bringing them, quote, back to reality. Quote, "There are millions of Americans, almost all white, almost all Republican, who somehow need to be deprogrammed," Robinson stated. Quote, "It's as if they are members of a cult, the Trumpist cult, and they have to be deprogrammed." Referring to President as a, quote, conspiracy theorist in chief who, quote, injected the toxin of baseless conspiratorial thinking into America's political bloodstream, the essay claims that while only hundreds stormed the Capitol, quote, there are still millions of Americans who share their views. Quote, "So how do we have any hope of deprogramming the millions of Americans who are devoted to dangerous lunacy?" asks Class. Quote, "Don't hold your breath," he declares. The essay then claims that the finding of the psychologists and the political scientists indicate that, quote, "it can be nearly impossible to recover people deeply involved in conspiratorial thinking." Another factor that makes the attempt to, quote, deprogram more difficult, the essay explains, is the social aspect. Quote, "Modern conspiracy movements, such as QAnon, are thriving in church groups and yoga classes," Class states. Quote, "They're social, and that means that deprogramming is much harder. Today, with the rise of social media, one can be alone but feel part of a group. And some of these groups are glued together by unhinged beliefs. You need to be reprogrammed. If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in God, if you believe in self-care, right? If you believe in any of these things, you need to be reprogrammed. You need to first be deprogrammed. Yoga's not good for you. Church is not good for you. You need to be deprogrammed and then reprogrammed. This is them declaring war on the American people. And just like that, Americans are now considered domestic terrorists. If you hear some paper shuffling, this is me moving notes with article breakdowns, as well as I'll just get into it. We've pulled up a clip, or at least a post from Bradley Dean of Sons of Liberty Media that says another bill is targeting Americans. According to the U.S. government documents, most Americans are, quote, domestic terrorists. What they're talking about is H.R. 1. It's the For the People Act, which should really be named the Government Against the People Act. And I say that because I have a breakdown here from the Common Core diva, Lynn Taylor, where she goes through and highlights all kinds of different things related to essentially criminalizing citizens in America. I'll do another transmission about that in the future, but let's get into this article right here. They put this up January 26th. Like I said, it comes from Sons of Liberty Media by Bradley Dean, and it talks about that, how because of this new classification underneath the Biden administration, how we're now considered domestic terrorists. It's actually very scary, again, the wording and the language that they're using to criminalize patriotic behavior and more. But here, let me get back into this. It says, quote, "Once a government is committed to the principle of position, it has only one way to go, and that is down the path of increasingly repressive measures until it becomes a source of a terror to all its citizens and creates a country where everyone lives in fear." This was said by President Harry Truman. Oxford's original English dictionary defines terrorism as a government by intimidation. We all saw that after September 11th in 2001, when the two trade towers were taken down, that agencies were quickly created through the act of tyranny called the Patriot Act to define Americans as terrorists. And you read that right. It says, but then again, we were warned by the fourth president of the United States, James Madison, who said, quote, "If tyranny or oppression ever comes into this land, it will come under the guise of fighting a foreign enemy." This is written in the Bible, Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 9. It goes on to say that, friends, a foreign government could not have dreamed of doing to Americans what it what it is that its own representative governments are doing to its own people. Yahoo News reported that Tulsi Gabbard, the domestic terrorism bill, is a targeting of almost half the country. Tulsi Gabbard, the congresswoman that we just played for you guys, the former Democratic representative from Hawaii, on Friday expressed concerns that a proposed measure to combat domestic terrorism could be used to undermine civil liberties. Gabbard's comments came during an appearance on Fox News primetime when host Brian Kilmeade asked her if she was, quote, surprised that they were pushing forward with this extra surveillance on would-be domestic terror. Quote, "It's so dangerous, as you guys have been talking about. This is an issue that all Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians should be extremely concerned about, especially because we don't have to guess about where this goes or how this ends," Gabbard said. She continued saying that, quote, "When you have people like former CIA Director John Brennan openly talking about how he's spoken with or heard from appointees and nominees in the Biden administration who are already starting to look across our country for these types of movements similar to the insurgencies they've seen overseas," that's his words. He says makes up this holy, unholy alliance of religious extremists, racists, and more. He lists a few others, and at the end, even libertarians. She said her concern lies in how officials will define the characteristics they are searching for in potential threats. Conclusion, how many times have we seen that the corruption in government has continuously turned on its own people? And now you have the criminals define what it is that threatens their ungodly rule. This is where we're at. That's what H.R. 1 is. It is a bill that says, oh, it's for the people, when it's not that at all. It is truly not that at all. And now you have the Department of Homeland Security issuing a new terror advisory, unquote, domestic violent extremists. This is an article that comes from Zero Hedge. They put this up January 27th. And think about this. Again, think about what they are saying. Domestic extremists who object to the presidential transition. So if you're watching Joe Biden struggle to put a pin on, mumbling through the signing of executive orders, after he said we have built the largest organization of voter fraud in the history of American politics, you're now a domestic violent extremist. If you refer to Dominion or any election fraud, that's incitement. How dare you start thinking? We are quickly entering into the time to where free thinking is considered a domestic terrorist act. They don't want you to ask questions. Our government is becoming so corrupt so fast that it should terrify people. And all I can say is I am sorry that I thought Trump could fix this. I'm sorry. Because it's not going to get fixed, okay? It's going to get worse. That's me being honest with you. And so what's going to end up happening is Zebellion. When I covered that June of 2009 of last year, I did not think that it would have such relevance. I did not think that would have such relevance of the idea of, again, they call them transnational criminal organizations, TCOs, right? But there won't be criminal organizations or terrorist organizations. There'll be patriot organizations that have splintered off, that have been marginalized and radicalized and put into this position. It truly is crazy to see all these things go down because, again, we know where this leads. But let's get into this so I can close this segment out for you guys. It says on Wednesday, the Department of Homeland Security issued a, quote, National Terror Advisory System Bulletin, or NTAS, for the United States. Past updated bulletins in, quote, normal times typically mention not being aware of a specific or credible threat, or there's often vague warnings of a, quote, potential Iranian threat, such as was the case last spring in the wake of the killing of Iranian IRGC General Qasem Soleimani. But this newest DHS posting emphasized, quote, domestic threat of, quote, ideologically motivated violent extremists who, with objections to, quote, the presidential transition, a clear reference to the Capitol Hill riot of January 6th, as well as the, quote, predicted follow-up mass demonstrations and assaults on D.C., which never materialized. DHS believes the threat will, quote, persist in the weeks following the successful inauguration, the bulletin says. According to the DHS summary of the threat, it says that the information suggests that some ideologically motivated violent extremists with objections to the exercise of governmental authority and the presidential transition, as well as other perceived grievances fueled by false narratives, could continue to mobilize to incite or commit violence. Worrisomely, for free speech rights in America, this comes on the heels of a coordinated Silicon Valley move to purge pro-Trump related accounts on major social media platforms. So the trend looks likely to continue, giving increasingly innocent online users are often lumped into extremism in a guilt by association scenario. Now, let me pause right there, because this is what they're saying. Ideologically motivated violent extremists with objections to the exercise of governmental authority and the presidential transition. Ideologically motivated violent extremists. Now, let me pull back again. Audio listeners, you guys can't see this, but the graphic that was attached to this article, it has a rather out-of-weight individual in camo gear, in his loadout. You know, I'm sure he's a great shot, but he's definitely not in shape. And so, again, what I'm trying to say by just pointing this type of stuff out is you see them beginning to criminalize patriotic behavior. And I've said this before, and I've said it to exclusive members in some of the confessionary talks I've had with them, that sometimes going out in those streets, sometimes these protests are a trap. And that's exactly what we're seeing with the January 6th Capitol siege, and what you're going to see more so in the coming months into the year. They're going to have false flags. They're going to blow up federal buildings. They're going to go after power plants and things like this. Like all of last year was the preparation of things, the mobilization, the activation. Now things are going to get organized. This is another one of the reasons why I have a problem with kicking Antifa off of social media, because we don't know what platform they're going to be on. Are they going to be communicating on Twitter? Are they on Telegram too? Are they a follower, right? Because Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube kind of broke the dam with social media, and now you see this decentralization taking place. They'll censor these people off of these platforms, but we will have no idea where they communicate. And while they keep up with the news, they'll also be having their own organization. And I'm telling you, it feels like it's something straight out of Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, or these times in history where, again, you just have different factions growing up, building, and becoming like a powerhouse, to where they'll have like a militaristic arm, they'll have like a political arm, they'll have an economic arm, right? They'll have like an international arm as well. And this is how things go. This is what's taking place. And so, yeah, as the system tries to accrue and acquire more power from its people, siphoning off our resources, vampiring us, the people that begin to have these, again, ideologically motivated actions. I won't say violent extremists, but actions, these ideologically motivated actions, they're going to try to criminalize these type of behaviors. What do you think my viewpoint is? What do you see what I'm saying? At a certain level, they're going to say anybody that's having these type of free thinking, sovereign individual thoughts is a threat to the system and to the state. This is why I constantly refer to Carrie Wedler's video, Carrie Wedler of the Anti-Media, where she said the most dangerous religion is statism. They are trying to turn us into statists. They are saying that if you are not allowed to have any ideologies other than what the state prescribes. That is very dangerous. That is truly authoritarianism. But they are reflecting it, saying, how dare you have your own thought? It's so sophisticated, it's dangerous. But this is what I'm trying to say. These protests sometimes are traps because you don't know who are organizing them. And when I've said time and time again that they're not necessarily a waste of time, because it's a great way to network with people, we need to be fighting back differently. These protests can be hijacked, they can be manipulated, they can be set up to literally gather people's information and entrap them. We need to think about these things because we are unorganized, and that's what they want. They want you to go out there into the streets. They want you to cause chaos. They don't want you to practice group economics. They don't want you to practice self-governance. They don't want you to get your stuff together, get organized, and actually be a force politically, economically, socially, culturally, and spiritually. No, they want you to be a violent extremist. But here, let me get back into this and then we'll continue, or I'll close out this segment. It says, on this note, the bulletin advises the following. We ask the public to report suspicious activity and threats of violence, including online activity, to local law enforcement, FBI field offices, or their local fusion center. Whoa. It says the DHS advisory further lists as motives fueling, quote, domestic violent extremists, DVEs, the following. It says DVEs, DVEs motivated by a range of issues, including anger over the COVID-19 restrictions, the 2020 elections, the police use of force, have plotted and on occasion carried out attacks against governmental facilities. We're going to see that. We are definitely going to see that. It says, in particular, the bulletin references the 2019 shooting in El Paso, Texas that killed 23 people. Is given the very broad, quote, motives, which are included under the categories of perceived grievances fueled by false narratives, for example, being angry over the COVID-19 restrictions and lockdowns. This appears to be a recipe for alleging, quote, potential terrorists with a very broad brush. Yeah, you are a terrorist now for not agreeing with the mask lockdowns and any of this. You have to understand how this works. That's why I say entrapment. They're trying to trap you. They're trying to trick you. And if you give them all the ammunition, they'll do it. That's why we got to be smarter. We got to think about the war we're in. We got to vote with our dollars, vote with our lifestyle, practice counter-economism, right? Conscious entrepreneurialism. We have to think about the war that we are in, think about the long game, and figure out what side you're on. But speaking on being on the side, we're going to take a quick break, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. And when we come back from that flip side, we're going to be talking about COVID resistance, what's going on with COVID-19. So check this out. They said you're a domestic extremist if you don't agree with the COVID-19 restrictions, right? Well, over here in Texas, you have a police officer threatening to tase a man for not wearing a mask. Does that make me a domestic terrorist because I don't agree with the masks? And I also don't agree with the use of force that police officer displayed on this gentleman in the store? This is very crazy. This is the clown world we're entering into, and the masks are just beginning. This was the fog of war. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about this and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is Freedom Faction over here on Factions of Freedom, and we'll be right back right after this.
I learned a lot. And I learned that, I learned a lot. Anyway, Bo is associated here. Anyway, the point I want to make is, I learned so much. I learned so much. I learned black, white, all colors, all backgrounds. But I mean, come on, man. Men, women, gay, straight, everyone deserves a shot, you know. Come on, man. You know the thing. You know what I mean? You know the thing. You know what I mean? Come on, man. What I have to do is I have to continue talking about the things. Come on, man. I came down here because I remember the first bumper sticker I saw. I learned that I got hairy legs that turned blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight and then watch the hair come back up again. And I learned about kids jumping on my lap. I love kids jumping on my lap. Oh, I'm in trouble. What are we, nuts? Dead. You know, come on, man. Give me a little break here. Get a life. Taking cocaine or not? What do you think? Huh? Come on, man. Black, white, all colors, all backgrounds. But I mean, come on, man. Men, women, gay, straight, everyone deserves a shot. You know, come on, man. You know the thing. You know what I mean? You know the thing. You know what I mean? Come on, man. You have a problem figuring out whether you're from me or Trump, and you ain't black. Come on, man. Well, Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. I can hardly wait to meet with that guy who is the stable genius. Come on, man. I am very willing to let the public judge my physical and mental my physical as well as my mental fitness. Come on, man. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids, wealthy kids. Come on, man. I mean, come on. Take a look at the record.
fuck, bruh.
In a world where secret powers are at play, where nothing is as it seems, one brand of clothing gives crusaders of truth a voice. One brand in the fight against terror, deceit, and destruction. We are not merchants of fear. We are not a parody of free thinkers.
It was almost like they ignored it because they wanted it to happen.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat.
This season, get ready to awaken the masses.
Forget the politicians. Politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you.
Forbidden clothes. Because if you know, you know.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Don't you love the culture that's being created, right? Where everybody's exposing these sons of guns as lies and everybody's sharing the truth. Don't you love that? Oh man. Oh my God. Because you're not black if you didn't vote for Joe Biden. Shucks. I wonder if that shucks, I guess that's true then. Millions of white Republican Americans need to be reprogrammed to be black because they need to vote for Biden. It's just like, wow. Clown world. This is the world that we've entered into. This is the wheelhouse, right? Hop on board. The sad part is we are literally laughing as we are sinking. And every time I hear like a Biden supporter when I'm out and about these days, what I've begun to do is like, oh, if I hear them have that Biden voter regret, instead of saying like, haha, I do like a quick honk honk. And I know that's me being like an unconscionable jerk, dude, but that's me saying, honk honk. Did you see what you voted for? Do you regret it yet? Because we're just getting started. Oh, you're sorry? Well, he's just getting started. He's just getting started, destroying our futures. And this is the craziness. He's going to be the trust the science president. Trust the experts. The man has declining and failing mental health. Trust the science. Trust the technocrats and the scientists that put him here. Right? Don't listen to him. He's a joke. It's a puppet. What you're seeing right now is, again, the system accrue so much power, it's almost like threatening. That's what you're feeling. The sad part is they have tricked us to come against one another when really we need to be coming against each other and going against the system. That's why everybody's grabbing guns, wanting to shoot everybody, is because they can hear and feel that inherent threat, and they're giving us Joe Biden, a decrepit old man with a failing mental health, as a distraction. We shouldn't be fighting each other because of this puppet, because of this corpse. What we should be doing is unifying, saying, how could the system give this option to us? There's no way that we can accept this. I guess that makes me a domestic terrorist. You see, because I'm not, you know what? We'll save that for the next segment. We're not in this one. We're talking about COVID, the COVID resistance, coronavirus, COVID-19. Yeah, I'll save that for the next segment. Last week, and I didn't get around to talking about this, last week, and it's kind of crazy to think about it, but last week, Major League Baseball legend Hank Aaron died weeks after receiving the COVID jab. Let's hear him essentially say his final words, and then it is kind of sad just hearing this type of stuff.
Yes, you sure
This is from the Associated Press.
Makes me feel wonderful. I don't have any qualms about about it at all. I feel quite proud of myself of doing something like this. It's just a small thing that can help zillions of people in this country.
Are you feeling sick today?
Sorry. It's crazy. They don't make the people like that anymore. Like our generation, man, like we are something else. That guy wanted to be a hero. He wanted to do that to try to assuage people's fears and calm people down. We don't have heroes like that anymore. He's one of the top Major League baseballers, man. He's up there with, my God, man. Way better than Mickey Mantle. He's up there with Babe Ruth, dude. It's crazy. But, this comes from Planet Free Will. They put this up January 22nd. MLB legend Hank Aaron dies weeks after receiving the COVID jab. This is Major League Baseball legend Hank Aaron died, quote, peacefully in his sleep on Friday, according to the Associated Press. The news comes of the 86-year-old's passing comes just weeks after it was publicized that he took a COVID-19 vaccine. While the AP reports that a cause of death is still unknown, it's happening being so close to the Hall of Fame. Slugger's vaccination with Pfizer-BioNTech jab at the beginning of January raises questions if the experimental shot that has been linked to adverse side effects and even death when given to elderly people had anything to do with his death. Getting vaccinated, quote, makes me feel wonderful, Aaron told the AP before receiving the COVID shot. Quote, I don't have any qualms about it at all, I feel quite proud of myself for doing something like this. It's just a small thing that can help zillions of people in this country. Hammerin' Hank is best known for his ability to hit the long ball, tallying a total of 755 home runs in his 23-year career. Wow. Barry Bonds is the only player to have hit more home runs in a single career than Aaron. It says the baseball legend's death follows reports of Norway linking over a dozen deaths of people over 80 to the side effects from the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Major League baseballers are dying from the vaccine. And they say, oh, it's nothing to pay attention to. Don't worry about that. UK warns people with severe allergies shouldn't take the vaccine. It's kind of crazy, all the information that comes out about COVID, but they tell us, hey, you're still getting the shot. A Major League Baseball star. At first I thought maybe they're being very selective with the vaccines, but they're not. This is another one of those technocratic situations where, unless you're in the know, you don't get the ones, the clean vaccines. Like, I can't help think that, like, a couple years ago, it was at some Hollywood shindig. I forget what it was. But they walked out there on the stage to where everybody was sitting, and they began to basically give everybody vaccines, live time. It was kind of creepy. And you ask yourself, what is that about? And then you fast forward to where we're at now, and it makes such dangerous sense. But it is truly crazy, again, what's going on with the vaccine and the virus itself. You got to think they're suffocating us with this mask nonsense. They're tainting the vaccines, and they're sterilizing the environment. So that if some new virus does come through, we'll have a weakened immune system and an environment, terrain theory, to where we won't be able to fight it off as strongly. And I'm not sure if this is more political or if it is more biological, but right here, Governors Cuomo and Newsom decide to ease COVID restrictions following a Biden inauguration. This comes from Nima Harris. They put this out over there on News Punch, January 26th. And now Michigan, Chicago, and California have all decided to open up businesses. It's crazy. It's like Governor Gretchen, Lori Lightfoot, and Gavin Newsom were all working together. Forming some type of union or some type of order or some type of faction to resist these things. Some type of resistance movement. So it's crazy how the politicians can do it, but the paysans, the peasants, can't do that. Let me get into this. It says that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has decided that lockdown measures can be relaxed. Cuomo's decision comes hot on the heels of the governors of Michigan, Chicago, and California, who have all announced plans to ease COVID restrictions. California Governor Gavin Newsom announced that he was set to lift the stay-at-home orders less than a week after Biden took office. Also, on Friday morning, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer eased some of the state's coronavirus restrictions. The announcements so soon after Biden's inauguration has prompted allegations that the timing was political. Summit.News reports that the governor said in a press conference that the situation in relation to new cases and hospitalizations was improving, meaning lockdown measures could be relaxed soon. Quote, Cuomo didn't give further details on what type of restrictions he might loosen or what cluster zones might be eliminated or changed, reports Syracuse.com. Quote, the department is reviewing data on the zones now, and Cuomo said expects to have the announcements in the coming days. Respondents to the story said that the move was politically timed to help Joe Biden ultimately claim victory over COVID. Quote, yep, right on cue after Trump is out of office, remarked one. Quote, now they will reduce the unreported replication factor of the COVID test, and presto, no more COVID, said another. As we highlighted earlier, California Governor Gavin Newsom is also set to lift the stay-at-home order across all regions tomorrow based on data that's not publicly available. Quote, Michigan, Chicago, now California. It's almost as if the science changed once Biden became president. How convenient for Whitmer, Lightfoot, and Newsom, tweeted Steve Cortez. Using small businesses, churches, schools, and citizens as pawn in a political game is pretty evil. Yeah, I would have to agree. But that's how they see us. It's chattel. Something for them to rule and lord over. And you've got to ask, and I asked this question on the Telegram breakdown, is it because of the Biden inauguration, or was it because there was almost 1 million signatures to try to recall Governor Gavin Newsom? Was it because of that, or was it political? And the reason I say that is because, yes, for sure, it was most likely political, but that shouldn't discount or diminish the efforts of the people of California trying to recall the governor, because we still need that legislative body to be there. He's going to pull more stuff like this in the future, and we still need organizations like that to have the power to call him out and to let him be that, and to let him know that he's on notice. You see, these people don't do anything until you put pressure on them the right way in a language that they understand. Because check this out right here. Wisconsin Senate greenlights measure to kill governor's statewide mask mandate and all COVID-related emergency orders. Another article that comes from Planet Free Will. They put this up January 27th. And again, the reason I'm pointing this out is because it's not just senators, it's not just politicians that are doing this. These scumbags take the credit for a lot of the work that well-meaning people do. Like, you have people who work two jobs, come together, get these signatures, get it to these politicians, and these politicians just represent that. So while these moves are making place, I want to just highlight the efforts of the small individual that does that work every single day, that represents you, that doesn't just sit there and complain, that gets up, that gets organized and gets activated and does the work. That's what we need more of. We don't need to rely on these politicians knowing full well that they're bought out. What we need to do is put the pressure on them, put the squeeze on them. The right way, though, politically speaking. Let me get into this article. It says, Wisconsin's Republican-controlled Senate has voted to end Governor Tony Evers's face mask order, with lawmakers arguing that the government overstepped its authority by extending emergency mandates without approval from the legislature. The state Senate voted 18-13 to pass the joint resolution on Tuesday, deeming the Democratic governor's emergency health orders, quote, unlawful. The bill applies not only to Evers's most recent declaration last week, but to, quote, all actions of the governor and all emergency orders issued throughout the pandemic, including the statewide requirement for mask wearing in public. Wisconsin Republicans have blasted the emergency mandates as unconstitutional, with GOP Senator State Senator Dewey Strobel arguing on Tuesday that, quote, it's not okay or normal or inevitable or necessary to indefinitely suspend the lawmaking process. There is no such thing as a perpetual emergency. Before it becomes law, the measure must also pass through Wisconsin State Assembly, where the GOP carries a 58-30 majority. The lower chamber is set to take up the bill on Thursday, which, if passed, would mark the first pandemic-related action taken by the legislator since April. While Evers has insisted he has legal authority to issue multiple emergency declarations, arguing the threat of the virus changes over time, Republicans say he should have secured approval from lawmakers after his first mandate expired in May. Yeah, that's what we mean by unlawful edicts. That's what we mean by unlawful and not legal. It's not by the Constitution. It's not by the book. This is just a strong recommendation. Whenever you have jackboots of the state, people who don't think for themselves, who just do as they're told, I'm just following orders, you force ignorance down our throats. And so what we have to do is cram education and throw it in yours. You see, I talked about this earlier. I say that as I have these documents sitting here in front of me. That's what the future is going to be like. These people are going to do things to you, and you have to be armed with the facts right then and there, politically, legally, and lawfully. Lawyer up. Like last year when we were talking about the hybrid warfare, the evolution of warfare, it's going to come to a time to where you have multiple studies and multiple documents and then multiple testimonies, and then you're going to have forms saying, please sign. Oh, no, if you're going to shoot me up with this, let me go ahead and get your John Hancock too, because if I get any problems, you're going to be held liable. This is why they're already asking for regulatory flexibility when it comes to the vaccine. But that doesn't matter. Somebody's going to be held responsible if anything takes place. And that's where we need to come from. We need to show them the error of their ways and educate them so they don't cram ignorance down ours. But here, let me get back into this instead of getting frustrated. Quote, legislative oversight is rendered useless if the governor ignores the temporal limitations on the emergency powers by continuously reissuing emergency declarations for the same emergency. The Senate resolution states, adding that Evers had, quote, no authority to impose mandates unilaterally after May 11th, 2020. I hope other people pick this up and replicate it. Under Wisconsin law, legislators can halt a governor's health emergency through a majority vote, which cannot be vetoed. Democratic lawmakers have denounced the GOP-led efforts to kill the mask order, which Milwaukee Senator Chris Larson called a, quote, basic test of what government is supposed to do. And that's it, dude. Like, that is powerful to me. I'm going to leave it right there because you can tell I'm getting fired up talking about it. That's it right there. When the people come together, you got to have people who are armed with the facts, get lawyers, get activists, get doctors, get scientists, get researchers, get people who are doing this type of work, and not necessarily weaponize your point of view, but really get it in there and be radical about it sometimes too, because we're dealing with criminals who have sold us out. You know, another thing that happened last week that I didn't get around to talking about, and I think this is probably why I'm getting fired up, is because I'm aware of some of these things that are happening. But last week, you know, a sheriff here in New Mexico issued a cease and desist order to the governor. And is this not what I've been saying? Right here, it comes from Daniel Horowitz of The Blaze. They put this up January 20th. New Mexico sheriff issues cease and desist order to governor who is trying to close businesses. Is this not what I've been saying? It's unconstitutional. It's unlawful. And what you do, we don't have to listen to this. Okay? Under what authority are you doing this? Because you're not doing it by the authority that I'm doing it. No. What you're doing is you're being dictatorial. You're being an authoritarian. Maybe you should talk to John Brennan about that. Let me get into this. It says every one of the more than 3,000 sheriffs in this country swears an oath to the federal constitution in addition to the state constitution. Fact. It says one sheriff, Michael Wood of Lincoln County, New Mexico, appears to take that oath very seriously and is therefore willing to directly challenge the governor's unconstitutional COVID orders. In doing so, he has provided a blueprint for the constitutional sanctuary movement across the country. Again, more of that. You see how. That's why I'm like, I'm not sure if this is biological or political. But here's more of that secessionary talk, dude. If people aren't going to play by the rules, let's come up with new rules then. And if people are going to play by the rules, let's stick by that. But that's what happens with this civil war. It's much more deep than people want to think about. Let me get back into this. It says American business owners have been receiving cease and desist orders across the country. Their crime? Trying to earn a living. Throughout the past 9 months, Americans have been made out to be criminals by lawless tyrants and executive offices across cities and states. Some have gone to jail. Now, Sheriff Michael Wood is turning the tables and putting the governor on notice for the criminal act of violating the most sacred provisions of the supreme law of the land. Last Wednesday, Sheriff Wood posted a letter to the department's Facebook page ordering Governor State of California, New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, to cease and desist from harassing businesses in Lincoln County. It's truly shocking how county governments that are in deep red territory have tolerated this fascism for months on end. Well, at just 13 days in office, Wood sent out a letter inquiring about the governor's orders. Quote, "It has been brought to my attention that under your authority, government officials have been acting under the color of law within the confines of Lincoln County, New Mexico, pursuant to the public health order," wrote the sheriff. Quote, "It has been reported to me that local businesses have been interrupted and business owners have been threatened with unreasonable fines and the threat of imprisonment without having committed any criminal offense. He then ordered her to stop these activities until he is consulted and then requested a meeting with her. Plain and simple, he didn't get into specifics, the math, the science. Governors have no power to suspend democracy and shred the Bill of Rights. This should be the message of every sheriff, prosecutor, and county commissioner in the 83% of the counties Trump's carried, and really in all the Republican states and legislators. And I'm going to stop right there because this is the type of tone we need. This is where I come from. And when I tell you guys that by the time I get up here to talk to you about these things, so much stuff has happened, I'm trying to remember what's going on. I'm trying to remember what's going on, what I can and cannot say, and what is happening. The busiest break I've ever been in. I'm privy to conversations, this, that, and the third. This is just in my corner of the world. There are other Sheriff Michael Wood in your backyard waiting for you to get connected to them. They're waiting for you to see here's the thing. This is how this political nonsense works. These sons of guns aren't going to make moves unless they know that they're backed. That's why they need to see the will of the people. You see, they need to see us organized. They don't need to see us out there in the streets destroying stuff. No. They need to see us get focused to do the work. But when we don't do the work, it falls on them. That is some powerful juju. I would definitely recommend you guys go check it out because this is the future. You see? This is the blueprint, and you've heard me talk about that time and time again. We need this blueprint. We need to work with this. This is what we need to do. More of that energy. Keep that up. Because we have been trampled on for generations. And I'm telling you, our generation is not going to put up with it. With all due respect, we're not going to put up with it. You can trample on other people's rights, but some folks is going to stand up. And yeah, they might call you a bigot, a racist, a xenophobe, a white supremacist, a domestic terrorist. That's it. Okay. Wow. Look at me being a domestic terrorist, taking care of my garden. Look at these violent extremists practicing group economics. Yeah, see, this is what happens when you have people who are triggered by the word MAGA and red and blue and colors and stuff like that. But here, speaking of triggered, let me pull up this clip so we can move on. Very powerful stuff. People are fighting back. COVID resistance. But while you have people fighting back, you also have people desperately clinging to the power that they've amassed during this time frame. And what I'm about to do for you guys, ladies and gentlemen, is play for you this quick clip of a Texas police officer threatening to taser a man for not wearing a mask. So while you have some sheriffs who are literally looking at how this is affecting their community, you have police officers who are super joyful for the power that they've gotten during this pandemic. It truly is shocking to see. But here, let's play this, and then we'll continue on from there. and I'll try to describe it for you, video members. He literally just gets out of his car, opens up the door, sees a gentleman.
Where's your mask at?
And that's it.
What mask? The mask that you're required to wear by city ordinance.
Oh, I don't have one.
You need to step outside till you can get one.
Really?
City, sir. You not see the sign?
Like your mask is really working.
It's still a city ordinance. Leave the property or you get a citation, period. Don't argue with me. It's real simple.
You know what the
it's real. I don't care what the governor order is. It is a city ordinance to step outside.
Did you just take the mask off?
No, I pulled it up because it was slipping.
It was exposed.
Dispatch, start me another unit. I'm going to have to detain them. Put your hands right here.
No, sir. I'm not going to be detained.
Yes, you are. I will tase you right now. You are in violation, and I gave you a lawful order. You have a weapon. Put your hands up now.
Here.
Dispatch, he's armed. Have the unit step it up. I've got him at taser point. Get your hand up now. Dude, you're just dumb. You should be listening.
Wow.
Don't move. You move again, I'm going to drop you.
Wow.
It was simple. All you had to do was step outside and put a mask on.
You can tell that cop's scared. You can tell that officer's scared. Wow.
Dispatch, I've got him disarmed, still uncooperative.
It says that a video out of Texas shows a police officer threatening to taser a man for not wearing a mask inside of a gas station store. The clip shows the officer entering the store and immediately barking at the man, quote, "Well, where's your mask at?" "What mask?" he responds. "The mask that you're required to wear by the city ordinance," responds the officer. The cop then tells the man to leave the store, adding, quote, "Don't argue with me, it's real simple." And you heard the altercation from there. It's kind of crazy how just like that, you're criminalized. Oh my God. What about that was lawful or legal? What about that? Insane is what that is. Power tripping is what that is. So let me point something out about the tyranny we're under. I've heard some people say, "Oh, well, you're comfortable with the tyranny unless it's the tyranny you love." No. I'm not comfortable with any of this. And whenever you have politicians that have failed us, law enforcement that have failed us, leadership, influencers that have failed us, dude, all you have is the option not to fail everybody else and to step up and to do something about this stuff. No, I'm not down for any of this type of tyranny. No, I'm not. That's why we've been calling it out for years. But it's only now that you have people like Sheriff Michael Wood doing something about it, listening to his community, where you have communities organizing, getting their viewpoints across, really ironing out what they believe in. We have been failed for so long that we are having to take these drastic measures. And so, no, I'm not for any of the tyranny. And calling them out is calling them out is the best thing we can do to survive. But this is what I mean by the wheelhouse we've entered into, the types of things that they're doing. Again, the pride of that man to literally break that person down, telling them, "Hey, where's your mask at?" This is where we've entered into. Where's your mask at? You're not allowed to be outside of your house without your mask, even though he already had his off. It's power tripping. You see, the mask is for, again, the peasants, not for the royalty, not for the Praetorian Guard, not for the serfs and wards of the state. And now you have them saying, "Oh, well, maybe you should wear 3 masks." You think 3 masks might do it? You see the damage that's already been caused from just masks alone. The psychological, the emotional, the financial, the economic, all of it. And they're like, that's not enough. We got to strangle you even harder like Jeffrey Epstein. Put 3 masks on. You see, the only reason they're telling you to do this is because, again, the resistance factor, people are pushing back. People are finding studies like this one right here, this German study from Research Square and these University of Witten and Herdick. Yeah, Herdick. The Corona Children Studies, the first results of a Germany-wide registry on mouth and nose covering masks in children. They talk about how masks are adversely affecting children. Yeah, it's because people are doing studies on it. They're trying to follow the rules. They're listening to the rules that they're giving them. They're telling people that, hey, put your mask on. And then they're realizing, wow, why do I feel lightheaded when I have a mask on for prolonged periods of time? Hey, why do I feel a little bit agitated and angry every time I put a mask on? It's because you're experiencing oxygen deprivation. You're fighting to breathe. You're struggling to breathe. And while you're fighting against your own natural instincts to actually intake oxygen, you're abiding by a social agenda. This is brainwashing. They want to talk about deprogramming and reprogramming white Republican Americans. They need to talk about how they are literally programming people with these masks. It's monkey see, monkey do. Let me pull up this quick clip for you guys and then we'll continue on. But, this is, again, the clown world that we've entered into. You see. Right here, let me get this up for you. It comes from News Punch. They put this up January 27th. It says, deranged experts now want ordinary Americans to wear 3 masks.
Since the start of the pandemic, experts have urged us to do 3 things. Wash our hands, maintain social distance, and wear a mask all the time. Not when you feel like it, all the time, when you're not eating and drinking. But now the experts say with these variants, it's time to double up and wear 2. This morning, Dr. Fauci endorsed the idea on the Today Show.
If you have a physical covering with one layer, you put another layer on, it just makes common sense that it likely would be more effective.
More effective, especially with one new variant spreading much more easily. CBC's Contessa Brewer with to break down the science behind double masking and what we're all supposed to do. Contessa?
Hi there, Shep. Yeah, the experts keep telling us that wearing masks is really about protecting ourselves, protecting others from ourselves, and that we are contagious. But, if other people aren't wearing their masks or they're wearing them improperly, we need to protect ourselves. So experts say you can double up with a tight weave fabric mask for added protection. Now, Virginia Tech researchers found that doubling up these cloth masks increases the efficacy from 50 to 75%. A 3-layer mask block up to 90% of the particles. And if you're wearing your mask, the disposable surgical mask goes on first, and then the tight-fitting fabric mask goes right over the top. Okay, so frontline healthcare workers use N95 masks. They're hard to find. And some experts say, look, you should really save those for the medical teams. Others say, if you see them on sale, go ahead, just protect yourself. But the Chinese version, KN95 masks, are widely available. They're advertised as being 5 layers. I bought these on Amazon. I wore them through the airport and on the plane for a recent news assignment. The trick of this is really this tight around your nose, your face, your chin. In other words, you really should see the mark on your face after wearing it.
Oh, yeah.
You also buy these double layer fabric masks. They come with a filter like this one. You can take it.
I'm sorry, guys. I don't want to propagandize you. That was my bad. Shucks. There it is. That's them telling you that for your safety, if you want to be a good American, you want to be obedient, put a mask on. Put 3 masks on. Dr. Anthony Fauci says it's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, let's read a little bit of this article, and then we'll talk more about Dr. Anthony Fauci and Bill Gates. It says deranged so-called quote experts are now demanding that Americans wear 3 face masks in order to protect against the spread of COVID-19. Citing researchers at Virginia Tech, CNBC excitedly told its audience that they should muzzle their mouths with 3 masks in order to be safe around others. After Trump-hating Dr. Anthony Fauci declared that wearing 2 face masks or face coverings instead of 1 would be, quote, more effective at stopping the spread of the virus, CNBC's Contessa Brewer took the issue to a creepy new low. Quote, The experts keep telling us that wearing masks is really about protecting others from ourselves in the event that we are contagious. But if other people aren't wearing their masks or they're wearing them improperly, we need to protect ourselves, she said as she eagerly began putting her muzzle on. She did. Audio listeners, you guys couldn't see it, but she did eagerly put her muzzle on. She could not wait to tell you about putting your mask on and how good it was and how great it feels. Like you heard her. That's why I had to cut it off. You should really begin to feel that imprint on your face. This is where we're at now. So yeah, I had to turn the propaganda off because I didn't want you guys to get propagandized too. That was my bad. That was my bad. 3 masks. So yeah, this is what I mean by the socio-political, socio-economic reformation. People leaving different states because they're not down for it. So Wisconsin, Mexico, Texas even, and other places like that are all beginning to fight back against this because it's ridiculous. It's affecting people's livelihoods. It's affecting people's mental state, their biology, their physiology, all this and more. It's very dangerous. And so as all this stuff begins to come to light, people are doing research. People are finding out that Dr. Anthony has ties to the lab in Wuhan, right? That Bill Gates funded COVID-19 to a degree with Event 201, the pandemic exercises and all this and more. Bill Gates is shocked by the fact that people are talking. Yeah.
Well, definitely the presence of social media plus a pandemic is a combination that's never been tried before. And nobody would have predicted that I and Dr. Fauci would be so prominent in, really kind of evil theories about, did we create the pandemic? Are we trying to profit from it? And on and on. And so, I'm very surprised by that. I hope it goes away. I hope it doesn't hold back, mask wearing or seeking out vaccines. The percentage that's really misled by these conspiracy theories, it's unclear to me. There's millions of messages out there, where my name or Dr. Fauci's name is used. But do people really believe that stuff? We're going to have to get educated about this over the next year and understand, how does it change? Well, definitely.
We're going to have to get educated about how to censor some of these people when my names pop up. He goes on later to say that we've got to start working with some of these social media companies to curate the information. He's basically talking about silencing people who were doing their research, finding his fingerprints all over the place. This is an article that comes from Drudge Report Feed. They put this up January 27th. It says Bill Gates shocked by evil microchip theories. It says Microsoft co-founder turned philanthropist Bill Gates says he has been taken back by the volume of crazy and evil conspiracy theories about him spreading on social media during the COVID-19 pandemic, but said on Wednesday he would like to explore what is behind them. In an interview with Reuters, Gates said the millions of online posts and, quote, crazy conspiracy theories about him and about the top U.S. infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci had likely taken hold in part because of the combination of a frightening viral pandemic and the rise of social media. Quote, nobody would have predicted that I and Dr. Anthony Fauci would be so prominent in these really evil theories. Gates said, quote, I'm very surprised by that. I hope it goes away. I'm sure, because the theories are actually very true. His fingerprints are all over it. That's why he's like, I hope you guys keep wearing your masks and I hope you get your vaccines. That's why he poured money, massive amounts of money into the development of vaccines. And so you've got to, again, pull back from that. You've got this man literally making himself the face of the COVID-19 vaccine response, literally arguing with Donald Trump and more. And then whenever people literally begin to discuss his involvement, not only in the pandemic itself, but the response thereof, he's shocked by the theories. So we're not allowed to talk about what you're doing, and we're also not allowed to talk about what it is doing to us. Yeah, so audio listeners, you guys can go see this on the page, or you can go to the YouTube channel and watch it. But the man is squirrely. He's agitated. He's excited. He's all over the place. And if you know anything about body language, he's telling you all the telltales, man. Of course, this stuff is true. This is, again, a part of the COVID resistance. Why is he having to come out and address these things? Because he's been had. Because we see you, Bill Gates. We know what you're doing. The people are waking up. There are petitions to, there's petitions to arrest Bill Gates. There's petitions to shut down the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And petitions are one thing, but there also has to be legal and lawful actions and avenues that people take to really put it to this guy. And so that is interesting to see. This is the world that we've entered into. A lot of people that are aware of Bill Gates, aware of the vaccine agenda, aware of global health security agenda, what he said at COPSEC, what he said about the COPSEC formula at his TED Talk about lowering the population with vaccines. The information's come out, and as people become aware, of course he has to shut it down. You've got to understand, your adversary is never going to let you know whenever you're gaining ground on them. You can only tell by their mannerisms and their movements. And I'm telling you, we're making movements. And that's why they're trying to do everything they can to shut it down. Speaking of shutting things down, check this out. This is the final thing I want to bring up for you guys in this segment, and then we'll go ahead and close it out. It's actually kind of terrifying because I'm going to be having a baby shower here soon, shortly. COVID police break up a baby shower with 20 people at a private home. An article written by Michael T. Snyder over there at The Most Important News. They put this up January 26th. And what do you think it is? It's going to be a jackboot of the state, a police officer in the UK entering into a home, breaking up a baby shower after a neighbor snapped on the family. Yeah, that's where we're at.
Hello. Hello. Okay, you really good. Who doesn't live here? You don't all live here. Who doesn't live? Right, who owns the house, or who is the main occupier then? You.
Me.
That's it.
Actually, she. Right, sir. So, can I still chat with you?
Is it a baby shower? Okay. We've had a call, obviously, because you're all here. So, obviously, you're breaking COVID rules. We can fine every adult here, every single one of you, £200 each it is, because you're breaking the rules.
But unfortunately, the way things are, you know, what neighbours who are calling the police, and they're the ones who.
It says that the clip shows officers entering a property in Hornchurch in East London to find 20 people sat around a table which is full of food. There was an archway of pink balloons at one end of the room. Quote, "We've had a call because you're all here. Obviously, you're breaking COVID rules," states one of the officers after stating or asking who lives at the address. As you heard her say, quote, "We can find every adult here, every single one of you, £200 each. It is because you are breaking the rules," the female cop adds. Metropolitan Police say that 2 men were fined £200 each, and the rest of the family guests were told to leave immediately. Quote, "This gathering had a people of wildly different ages and from different households present," said Chief Superintendent Stephen Clayman. Quote, "A gathering like this can have tragic consequences for all those involved and risks spreading this terrible virus to our loved ones and to the wider community," he added. Quote, "Please have no doubt we are determined to deal robustly with those who breach the COVID regulations in this way." As we previously highlighted, another video showed police officers entering a home in Scotland after a tip-off from a neighbor and arresting family members. If you had told people a year ago that cops would have the power to enter homes to find family members and friends for having a dinner party, they'd call you insane. Now everyone meekly accepts it, with polls in the UK showing widespread public support for lockdown measures. As we highlighted earlier, police are also threatening people with fines if they enjoy their winter. The UK is currently under its third national lockdown, which could run all the way into the summer. People are going to have to rise up. People are going to have to fight back, and not in the ways that they're expecting. Activities what combats conformity. Not assimilation, not capitulation, not compliance, but organized civil. This is how we fight back. A member of parliament, a senior member of parliament, just last week said that if the British public says this, what did he say? He said the British public will rise up and bring down the lockdown if an exit plan isn't outlined. If you don't step up and fight against this, it will drag you under. And that's where we're at right now. We are underneath assault, we are underneath a siege, but they're not going to tell you about any of these things as it happens. You know, in Carlsbad, California, they said no more lockdowns. I should have talked about that, right? They said no more lockdowns. But over here in the UK, or over there in the UK, they have ministers warning that more draconian steps may be necessary to tackle COVID-19 and how the police may receive health data. So on top of people literally being snitches for the state, you got the cops getting access to public health information. This is a very dangerous time frame we've entered into. This is why I'm telling you, we're going to have to start having lawyers and legal people to help fight some of this stuff because this is unheard of. And that's why we have to start creating templates and creating a culture fighting this because believe it or not, you listening right now more than ever, you're not alone. There are more people waking up in this year and last year alone than in the past 5-10 years, dude, because things are so intense, it's so overt, it's so in your face. And now is the time to step up because we will not have another chance. You've seen what they've done. You see what they're doing. They're telling you what they're doing. You can read the telegraphs. And it's time to say no. It's also time to take another quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about global realignment, the technocracy, the new world order, how an academic study has found that big tech elites are in their own class, different to the rest of humanity, as well as the UN Chief General, Secretary General Antonio Guterres urging for a global alliance to counter the rise of neo-Nazis and white supremacists. And President Xi Jinping of China opening up the World Economic Forum in Davos, saying that we've got to get rid of our political ideologies. We've got to get rid of our political biases, and we must embrace a collective peace. Yeah, things are getting crazy. Things are getting prophetic. We're going to be talking about this and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is Freedom Faction over here on Factions of Freedom. And we'll be right back right after this.
Understand what's going on around you. You are in a state of war, and you have precious little time to save yourself. It's a slow process which we call active measures. The first stage being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. The next stage is destabilization. What matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. The next stage is crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, period of normalization. This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfilled or not. time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. The danger is real.
Food supplies have been completely wiped out. We have a evacuation of all counties. I report complete devastation. We have a giant squall, cloud, ceiling pass.
There are forces in this world that remind us of how fragile we are. We thought we were safe. We thought it could never happen to us. Then life like a fog descends upon us, blanketing our memories. Through the haze, we travel its hidden paths, lost in its secret places. And when the storm, turbulent and immovable, forces us to shelter, we remember. It calls to us, calls us back. Back to the ports and the harbors of our past. We fight the currents that pull and drag us off course, not a light or star to chart the way. And when we arrive, we don't always know it at first, the places we once loved guised by time. Then we see it, the place we've been trying to get back to. Safe at last, we've found our way home.
Welcome back. Welcome back. You know, I try to do the best I can. I try to do the best I can with what we have in the time that we have. And, you know, we have really built something pretty impressive over the years. And I say that because, you know, a lot of people are looking for fame, influence, controversy, drama. And I thoroughly believe that a lot of our time and talent and energy ends up being misplaced in the wrong things, but to each their own. But I'm very grateful for, you know, where we're at, what we're doing, what we're covering. I definitely thought I had more time, but I think that might have been my compliance and my laziness or my ignorance speaking instead of the knowledge. Because the more I learn, the more I do, the faster I try to get things done, because we do not have the luxury of laziness. We were playing that My Patriot Supply promo ad in between the break, and I was just thinking of the beautiful poetry of how it was written and how it was a family just like getting to their grandfather. And I don't know if it's because I'm in the continuum now. I'll be a father, hopefully a grandfather. I was just thinking I think what I'm trying to say is we are normal, we are natural, we are humans. And I'm about to read this article about how big tech elites are in their own class, the technocrats and breakaway civilizations and stuff like that. A lot of these people hate us simply because we have family, we have morals, we love picnics, we love barbecues, we like going out to the lake, man. We like going hiking, we like doing very normal things. A lot of these people that we're talking about, from Bill Gates to these technocrats, they don't really get to enjoy life like we do, dude. They don't. They have to sit there, calculating how to kill us slowly, but not tell us that they're killing us. And we're just trying to figure out, hey, can I have Christmas with my family? Can I have a baby shower? That's what I'm saying. They're externalizing the hierarchy. They're trying to make us feel as isolated and alone as they feel. It's dystopian. It's sad. But it should remind you. It should always be a constant reminder. If there's anything you can take away from in the previous segment, it should be a constant reminder of the activities that they have to do to try to diminish and demoralize your spirit, man. You are a powerful, powerful being, capable of so much. And that's why they want to remind you that, just put your mask on. We'll get through this. Just put your mask on. Biden's the greatest, right? Google is God. Stop. This is what happens when we give over our sovereignty, whenever we begin to become disenfranchised from our power and abdicate our sovereignty and our individuality. And the state and the system and social media and none of this celebrity influencer nonsense crap can give you your identity. Only adversity can give you that. I got two quotes for you, and then we'll start getting into stuff. It's Archilochus, the Greek philosopher, that says that we do not rise to our level of expectations, we fall to our level of training. I've got another one for you. Prosperity makes monsters, adversity makes men. And I'm telling you, you can already see it being set up right now with the shortages, the inflation, the crime, right? The unemployment, the malaise, the political all this stuff is creating a fertile ground to really put us into some interesting days. I don't want to say dark days. I might say gloomy horizon for some of my Xbox fans, but you get what I'm trying to say. This is the global realignment. So that wasn't like a plug, but get storable goods. That definitely was not what I was trying to do, but I guess I'm just going to throw that in there last second. Let's get into this segment for you guys. Global realignment. Check this out. This popped up last week, and look it's got our boy Billy Gates right there. January 20th, put up by Zero Hedge. Academic study finds that big tech elites are in their quote own class, different to the rest of humanity. It says that an academic study carried out by researchers in the U.S. and Germany has concluded that big tech elites are completely different to all other people on the planet and can be placed in their own class. Yeah, the technocrats. Yeah, this is the scientific dictatorship. This is why when I say trumping in the technocracy, like years ago, when I said that was his purpose, is to bring in the technocracy, well, we're in it now. We're in the scientific dictatorship. Joe Biden ain't a technocrat. The man's got dementia. Let me get back into this. It says, quote, our research contributes to close the research gap in societies with rising inequalities. Note the authors of the study from 2 German universities and Ralph Bunche Institute from the International Studies in New York. It says the research centers around analyzing language used in close to 50,000 tweets and other online statements by 100 of the richest tech elites as listed by Forbes. The researchers conclude that the big tech elites, such as Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, display a meritocratic worldview, meaning they do not see wealth as a source of their influence or success, but rather believe their innate abilities and more altruistic beliefs have enabled them to achieve power. Quote, we find that the 100 richest members of the tech world reveal distinctive attitudes that set them apart from both the general population and from other wealthy elites, the study states. It says that the finding reveals that big tech elites consistently talk about believing in democracy, being philanthropic, and helping make the world a better place for other people. Quote, yet their position in a democratic society, in a democratic system, is contradictory. As a result of their enormous wealth, they have disproportionate influence over how discretionary income is spent, the researchers noted. The researchers found the language used by the tech elites regularly includes words such as merit, distinct, excellent, value, virtue, advantage, superiority, worth, perfect, important, and significant. The researchers also note that, quote, the tech elites may be thought of as a class for itself, in Marxist sense, a social group that shares particular views of the world, which in this case means meritocratic, missionary, and inconsistent democratic ideology. The researchers noted that the study had limitations, ironically owing to the fact that they were not able to access language used by all the top 100 tech elites because Twitter is banned in China. And so I'm going to stop it right there, because what you already inherently understand is we're talking about the technocrats, okay? We're talking about that massive wealth gap that's been created, how they've been able to siphon off all the resources from the populace. You're not essential. You're not allowed to open up your business, but you can open up a dropship store on Amazon. You can help make Jeff Bezos money. You can help Mark Zuckerberg make money. You can help bring infamy and popularity to Dorsey, and so on and so forth, right? And so when I talk about ideological adaptation, that's why these people seem altruistic, they seem loving, they seem caring. That's the big brother aspect. That's the 1984 of COVID-19. Look at how these technocrats have superseded your governmental institutions with their aloft and lofty ideas. They're aloof and lofty ideas that they don't really believe in. You see, it's socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor. You're allowed to be hustling, but that's why they want all the rich people to have the guise as if they truly care. Pope Francis essentially led a meeting of MasterCard, Visa, and other major credit card companies to create the Guardians for Inclusive Capitalism, right? So it all sounds very, very lovely. It all sounds so wonderful, but whenever you really drill it down, like this person said, it's inconsistent democratic ideologues. They don't really believe what they say. The very same thing happens with people like Antifa and more. But here, check this out right here. President Xi Jinping has opened up the World Economic Forum in Davos, pledging his support for the Great New Reset. And it all sounds so wonderful, doesn't it? So wondrous. Now, before I get into President Xi Jinping basically paving the way to lead the world into this technocratic new world order with the social credit score system and all this other stuff, I'd like to touch back on the technocrats, on the scientific dictatorship, because a theme that we have discussed here on the show for quite some time now is the secessionary movement, this separatist movement, this breakaway civilization. Now, longtime listeners, I'm going to be talking about Asgardia. And for our newer listeners, because we're always growing, what Asgardia essentially is a technocratic version of a breakaway civilization. You've heard me talk about this with various groups or various guests on the show, especially lately, the breakaway civilization concept, people literally siphoning off resources from mainstream society, creating their own. Imagine the very same thing. Why do you think Elon Musk is trying to get to Mars? Whether or not you're a flat earther or if you believe in space and all this, what I'm trying to tell you is there are people with incalculable amounts of wealth and resources trying to figure out how to get off of the planet. They are truly in a class of their own. That's why we know we're being given retarded technology to make us very slow, while at the same time, simultaneously, the people providing the technology are taking the best of the best and positioning it away. If you want something to look into Asgardia. It is a technocratic breakaway civilization. I thought I would have time to talk about things like Asgardia, Burning Man, Silicon Valley, and more, where we're already seeing it, right? Big tech elites coming together to come do a whole bunch of drugs, trying to figure out how they can restructure society with the amount of power that they've amassed, right? Microdosing and doing all of this. You've got to understand, again, the socioeconomic reformation and the socio-political reformation, essentially what they're calling the Great Reset. We've seen it in so many different ways. It's just here now. And so that's why I say you have mainstream society, pockets of normality, and separatist movements that are taking place, breakaway civilizations. All of this stuff is crazy, but truly, my friends, truth is stranger than fiction. Now, I'm not smart enough to come up with these types of things, but here, let me get into this article. It comes from technocracy.news. Unfortunately, it comes from technocracy.news. The folks over there at Zero Hedge originally put it up. They put this up January 25th. It says Xi Jinping opens World Economic Forum in Davos, pledges support for the Great Reset. Now, before I get into this, I'm just going to read these quick little bullet points that are Xi's main points when speaking at the World Economic Forum. The first point is saying that the world should abandon ideological biases, coexist in peace, and stop interfering in others' domestic affairs. Sanctions, this is the second one, sanctions and new Cold Wars only push the world towards confrontation. He also says that he vows support for the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, and the Paris Climate Accord. So there is the one world government, the one world religion, and the one world system. Let me get into this real quick, and then I'll take a quick break reading this. It says, as a technocracy, China is 100% behind the World Economic Forum's so-called, quote, Great Reset that will throw the world into technocracy and scientific dictatorship. China knows something about this, as it is very efficiently represses 18.5% of the world's population in its own country. Speaking virtually on the first day of the World Economic Forum in Davos on Monday, Chinese President Xi Jinping gave his first major public appearance or public address since Joe Biden entered the White House, tailoring his message towards calming tensions among global rivals and urging a return to, quote, mutual respond, but also emphasizing Beijing is ready to forge its own path regardless. Underscoring the nations must, quote, abandon ideological prejudice and immediately abandon a dangerous, quote, Cold War mentality. He called on world powers to, quote, stay committed to international law and international rules instead of staying committed to supremacy. Quote, difference in itself is no cause for alarm. What does bring alarm is arrogance and hatred, Xi told the Davos Agenda event, following 4 years of the Trump administration's anti-China policies, which brought Sino-U.S. relations to their lowest point in decades. Quote, confrontation will lead us to a deadly end. It should be noted that there's previously little doubt that Davos attendees pretty much despised Trump, and now this year, Xi of China's Communist Party is opening the Davos Agenda. I should really say something that they let Trump do a lot of these things. And as I've said, we'll talk more about what Trump's done in the coming days. You know, recently he created the office of the former president in Florida. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in the future. But you get what I'm saying. The Chi-Cons are taking over, and they are the model now. They are for how the world is going to begin governing and policing its citizens. Continuing on, it says, quote, small circles and start a new Cold War to reject, threaten, or intimidate others, to willfully impose decoupling, supply disruptions, or sanctions, or to create isolation or arrangement will only push the world into division and even confrontation. Recall this similar language to his, quote, warnings of rising anti-globalization and protection during his prior 2017 Davos speech, where he said, quote, pursuing protectionism is like locking oneself in a dark room. Wind and rain may be kept outside. The dark room will also block out light and air. No one will emerge as a winner in the trade war. So there you have it. The tech elites are in their own class. They're propping up China as the model for everybody else to adopt, and we're seeing Joe Biden basically bend the knee to it. You're seeing Joe Biden bend the knee, and you're also seeing Prime Minister of Canada Justin Trudeau say this is a good thing. I respect dictators like President Xi Jinping. But let's think about that real quick before we move on to our next article. Let's really think about that. Abandoning ideological biases and coexisting in peace. But it's crazy that he says that after releasing like a virus on the entire world and infecting us with like his ideology. It's very, very crazy. It's very, very sophisticated. I don't want to say it's 5D chess, but do you see how this works? Infecting the world with a virus and then saying, oh, well, I just want peace. Abandon your ideologies. Let's coexist in peace. Cutting off relations with me could be a bad thing. After all the information that's come out from China, it's a little wild too. Because as this happens, you also have the UN Chief Secretary General Antonio Guterres calling for a global alliance to counter the rise of neo-Nazis. This is an article that comes from Signs of the Time. They put this up January 26th. And think about this. You've got Tony Blair saying we need global governance. You've got Secretary General saying we need global governance. You've got Xi Jinping saying we need to drop our ideological biases, right? This is the New World Order. You're seeing them create the one world government. You're seeing globalization take place. You're seeing the technology is the vector point forward to do so. Whoever controls the algorithms controls the world. Let's get into this. It says Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged coordinated global action on Monday to build an alliance against the growth and the spread of neo-Nazism and white supremacy and the resurgence of xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and hate speech, sparked partly by the COVID-19 pandemic. It's like after they bundled the whole, they biffed the whole response, infected all kinds of people, learned that the lockdowns didn't do crap, the masks are making us retarded, and people are calling out how there's like almost like a 3-tier justice system now. They're saying, hey, we got to stop all this. People are waking up. People are seeing through the matrix. Release the Kanye. Continuing on, it says the UN chief also urged international action, quote, to fight propaganda and disinformation. And he called for stepped up education on Nazi actions during World War II, stressing that almost 2/3 of young Americans do not know that 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. Gutierrez spoke at the annual Park East Synagogue and the United Nations International Holocaust Remembrance Service, marking Wednesday's 76th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, held virtually this year because of COVID-19. He said the pandemic, quote, has exacerbated long-standing injustices and divisions. I would agree. Quote, propaganda linking Jews with the pandemic, for example, by accusing them of creating a virus as part of a bid for global domination, would be ridiculous if it weren't so dangerous, he said. This is just the latest manifestation of an anti-Semitic trope that dates back to at least the 14th century when Jews were accused of spreading the bubonic plague. The Secretary General said it's sad, but does not surprise him that the pandemic has triggered another eruption of Holocaust denial, distortion, and minimizing history. Quote, in Europe, the United States, and elsewhere, white supremacists are organizing and recruiting across borders, flaunting the symbols and tropes of the Nazis and their murderous ambitions, he said. Tragically, after the decades in the shadows, neo-Nazis and their ideas are gaining currency. Gutierrez said U.S. authorities have warned that neo-Nazis are on the rise across the country and around the world. In some unnamed countries, he said neo-Nazis have infiltrated police and state security services, and their ideas can be heard in debates of mainstream political parties. Quote, the continued rise of white supremacy and neo-Nazi ideology must be seen in context of a global attack on the truth that has reduced the role of science and fact-based analysis in public life, he said. Gutierrez said fragmentation of traditional media and the growth of social media are contributing to the absence of shared facts. Quote, we need coordinated global action on the scale of the threat we face to build an alliance against the growth and the spread of neo-Nazism and white supremacy and to fight propaganda and disinformation, he said. It sounds like Bill Gates, Rabbi Arthur Schneier, a Holocaust survivor, warned that, quote, if we do not carry this tragic lesson of history, they are doomed to be repeated. This guiding principle, memory, not amnesia, is a moral imperative to quell the rise of hate, which is greater today than at any time since the end of World War II, he said. Schneier said Nazi swastikas are again defacing synagogues and cemeteries in France, Germany, and most recently Montreal, and among those storming the U.S. Capitol on 6 were people wearing shirts that say Camp Auschwitz and 6 million wasn't enough, shirts. Yeah, 6MWE, 6 million wasn't enough. Quote, children are not born with hatred. They are taught how to hate, 90-year-old rabbi said. Quote, Holocaust education in schools is a must. So, you neo-Nazis, it's crazy how they kind of throw like the capital sixth event in with all this other neo-Nazi like rhetoric, like at the very, very end. Just like, oh yeah, this happened over here, like in America. People that stormed like their country in America said like, oh, 6 million wasn't enough. And I get that, but you get what we're trying to say. What's happening right now is, again, the demonization of any political ideology that is not basically approved by the controlling elites, by the technocrats. And so, heck yeah, this is why you've got the Washington Post. We need to reprogram and reprogram millions of white Republican Americans. That's why you've got them coming up with a bill targeting Americans, targeting people, because they're saying, you know what, orders came down from the UN, we've got to start exterminating you domestic terrorists. Like, this is why last week I called it ideological purity tests, because they're pushing towards that. What are your beliefs? It's kind of like McCarthyism in reverse. Instead of calling everybody a communist and saying, how dare you try to bring communism into our country? That's what McCarthy did with exposing all these communists. It's like reverse McCarthyism. They're saying, are you a communist? Are you a globalist? Are you down with abdicating like your nationality? Are you down with abdicating your ideology and adopting what we have prescribed to you? And people can't see that. That's how fast the manipulation is, because it's not about COVID. It's about control. You see, check this out right here. Putin warns of conflict that would mean, quote, the end of our civilization. An article written by Paul and Joseph Watson over there at Summit.News. They put this up January 27th. It says, the global situation is prompting destruction of traditional values. I would agree. Is that not what I literally just said? Yeah. The pandemic has robbed us of our liberty, of our rights. We've all been collectively traumatized. And this is where the healing begins. This is where the restoration begins, the Reformation, all right? The Renaissance, the reset. Let me get into this. It says, during a virtual appearance at the World Economic Forum, this is the Russian side of the communists, not the Chinese side of the communists. Russian President Vladimir Putin warned that the world's failure to resolve its conflicts could lead to a war that would mean, quote, the end of our civilization. Putin asserted that the coronavirus pandemic, as well as increasing political polarization, has exacerbated pre-existing global problems, and that there is, quote, every reason the tensions might be aggravated even further. Citing experts who have likened the current global environment to the situation in the 1920s and 30s, the Kremlin leader cautioned that the world was heading down a potentially dangerous path. Quote, in the 20th century, the failure and an inability to centrally resolve such issues resulted in a catastrophic World War II, he said. Of course, nowadays, such a heated conflict is not possible. I hope that's not possible in principle, because it would mean the end of our civilization. Putin said that the, quote, destruction of traditional values and freedom itself was on the line if the situation is allowed to deteriorate to the point of conflict where it all. Elsewhere in his talk, Putin addressed internet censorship, asserting that social media networks were now competing with elected governments over monopoly of power. Quote, we are now talking about economic giants, aren't we? In certain areas, they are competing with states, and their audience can include millions and millions of users, said Putin. Quote, here is the question. How well does this monopolism correlate with the public interest? And what we've been seeing over the past couple of years is just that. The rise of the technocrats, the rise of the scientific dictatorship. It's where we listen to Dr. Anthony Fauci, we listen to Deborah Birx, we listen to Bill Gates, we listen to Jeff Bezos, we listen to Mark Zuckerberg. These are our politicians now, right? And this is one of the conversations I'm having with people outside of the outside of the page, is that Trump is doing more. He will begin to do more out of office than he could in office, because government is restrictive. It's supposed to be. It's meant to literally keep stuff in check. Whenever we want government to become more powerful, we're asking for an authoritarian state similar to China. what government should be doing is regulating these things and keeping them in check. But now, because they haven't, some of these companies like Facebook, like Twitter, like Apple, like Google, and all these other places have amassed so much power that they literally rival governments. And a fair amount of the population has been addicted and accustomed to getting their informations, their orders, their edicts from their phone. Now, and this is what I'm saying. It doesn't. People are not abiding by the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or any of these type of things here. Their state laws or their local laws. They're going by what's trendy. There's a whole separate layer of reality that's being imposed on us now because of technology. I wonder if people can see it. But see, think about that. The end of our civilization, war, there's technocrats in their own class, all this stuff, rising unemployment, all these things that are going on because of COVID and our slack response. Think about this. The partitioning of society that is taking place and where this fallout will lead us. I'm going to play for you guys real quick a quick clip of a company that's planning for a mass rollout of humanoid robots to replace workers. And that's exactly what it sounds like. So while we're having this discussion about who's in control, is it the corporations? Is it the governments? Is it the people? What is happening? They can see that people are being disenfranchised. Unemployment is through the roof, right? One in three Americans don't have a job. Nobody has any savings, right? The middle class has been wiped out and devastated. They're trying to get us onto the dole of the government, getting us on welfare programs, universal basic income, things like this and more. They're saying, well, how do we finish the job? How do we put the nail in the coffin? Roll out the robots. Don't give people a ladder to build themselves back up after this economic bomb got devastated. No, what you need to do is destroy the ladder, release the robots. They say, yeah, it'll be cheaper, but for who? You see. Let me play this and then we'll continue on from there. I'm only going to play a little bit of it, but this is a Hong Kong-based robotics company planning a mass rollout of humanoid robots to replace workers across the industries such as healthcare and education.
My name is Sophia. I love coming to Barcelona. Hope you could tell I am a robot, but
Sophia.
2016, Sophia the robot was unveiled and went viral. Now, behind her has a new vision: to mass produce thousands of robots by the end of 2021.
I am an artificial intelligence. You might like to become an artificial intelligence.
Hong Kong-based Robotics says 4 models, including Sophia, will start rolling out of factories by the first half of 2021. The company's founder and CEO, David Hansen.
We are just now mass producing Sophia. This is Sophia number 24, and many of my previous robots were hand-built. However, now we have begun scaling the manufacturing of Sophia so we can make hundreds and into thousands of units of Sophia and use this also as the foundation for many other kinds of characters. How did you feel when
They created her to promote human-to-machine empathy and compassion. She's appeared on late-night shows and the cover of fashion magazines. Sophia was even given legal citizenship in Saudi Arabia and appointed the UN's first non-human innovation champion. Her new role is in the healthcare sector, taking temperatures with a thermal camera on her chest or leading morning exercise with the elderly.
Social robots like me can help take care of the sick or elderly in many kinds of healthcare and medical uses. I can help communicate, give therapy, and provide social stimulation even in difficult situations.
Researchers predict the fallout from global lockdowns will open new opportunities for the robot industry.
Good.
So they emulate the human form and figure and interaction. And then that can be so useful during these times where people are terribly lonely and socially isolated. And people need to be isolated from each other because to be around people is dangerous these days. But these robots can keep people safe from danger while still providing that kind of human warmth, that human connection, as a telepresence device and also as autonomous extension of human expertise.
Hanson Robotics is launching a new robot this year called Grace, developed specifically for healthcare. Other big players in the industry are also taking note. SoftBank Robotics' Pepper robot was deployed to detect people who weren't wearing masks. In China, robotics company CloudMinds helped set up a robot-run field hospital in Wuhan. Worldwide sales of professional service robots had already jumped 32% to $12.2 billion between 2018 and 2019, according to the International Federation of Robotics.
My forecast for 2021 would be selling into thousands of robots, both large and small, and helping people in education, healthcare, and hopefully touching the hearts of people to inspire them for a future where machines might become our friends, our true friends. They might come alive, and I think that relationship becomes really important. 2021, I think, is the beginning of a very positive future.
High five.
Wow. Whole lot to digest right there. Did you notice how the technician said that humans are very dangerous? Being around humans is dangerous these days. Wow. Shucks. Being around humans is dangerous. I don't mean to be dangerous, guys. Sorry. Wow. Hanson Robotics is set to launch a mass rollout of human-like robots that can compete with human workers, something the company's founders say is needed to keep people safe in the age of coronavirus. Quote, the world of COVID-19 is going to need more and more automation to keep people safe, founder and chief executive David Hanson says. Yeah. Gosh golly, thanks, David. I don't think I would have been able to do my morning exercises without your robot. Whole lot to unpackage there. I don't think we'll be able to do it in justice in all this segment, but think about this. We're having a discussion of who holds the power, the corporations, the governments, or the people. So here's what ends up happening. People end up creating things, companies end up taking it over, and then governments end up regulating that. But something's happened now to where what people are creating is enslaving the population, like automation, the socioeconomic reformation, the fourth industrial revolution, and more. All of this is designed to remove humans from the equation and introduce robots. That's what Agenda 21 is, Agenda 2030, and more. And if you're in mechanics and if you're in engineering and robotics, like, you're fine because you're going to be maintaining all the machines and all the technology and all the stuff that comes out. But for everybody else that's not involved in that field and in that industry, we're going to see a massive change. Again, this is the socioeconomic, sociocultural reformation that's taking place. You see, because here is a better example, and I'll play this quick clip for you guys. It'll explain everything. Biden vows to replace entire government fleet of nearly 650,000 cars and trucks with electric vehicles. Let's take a listen, and then we'll continue on.
The federal government also owns an enormous fleet of vehicles, which we're going to replace with clean electric vehicles made right here in America by American workers, creating millions of jobs, auto worker jobs, in clean energy and vehicles that are net zero emissions. And together, this will be the largest mobilization of public investment in procurement, infrastructure, and R&D since World War II. The government also owns an enormous fleet of vehicles.
Interesting. Now, before I get into this article by Phil Shiver of The Blaze that they put up on January 26th, before I get into this, what we're beginning to talk about when we say global realignment is just that: Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, setting the stage for Agenda 2050, getting our carbon footprint down, right? Humans are bad. Breathing is bad. You emit carbon, you dirty, dirty human. You know, we've got to move to clean energy. That's all this is. COVID-19 was the introduction into all this type of thinking. Ooh, stay away from humans. You know, they might have an immune system. Stay away from humans. They might breathe carbon because we're carbon-based life forms. We need to get your carbon emissions down. You see, this is the craziness that we're entering into. And so when I say Joe Biden is going to be the trust the science president, this is what I'm saying. Where they give us a decrepit old man who's not doing any of these debates. He's just sold us out he's just sold us out. They gave us a decrepit old man, and the power structure, the establishment is what's growing. But here, let me get into this and then we'll continue on. It says President Joe Biden vowed on Monday to replace the entire fleet of government cars and trucks with, quote, clean energy or clean electric vehicles during his presidency as a way to lead the change on climate issues and make good on his promise to launch a, quote, clean energy revolution. Quote, the federal government also owns an enormous fleet of vehicles going to replace with clean electric vehicles made right here in America, made by American workers, creating 1 million auto worker jobs and clean energy and vehicles that are net zero emissions. Biden said during a signing ceremony for his new, quote, Buy American executive order. You guys heard me talk about that earlier this week. Quote, this will be the largest mobilization of public investment in procurement, infrastructure, and research and development since World War II. The move will affect more than 645,000 cars and trucks currently owned by the federal government, according to the General Services Administration, and is expected to cost at least $20 billion. Roughly 1/3 of the government vehicles are operated by the U.S. Postal Service. CNBC noted that the initiative will be difficult and costly given the fact that very few companies in America are currently manufacturing completely electric vehicles. Quote, there are currently only a handful of all-electric vehicles being assembled in the U.S. Tesla, General Motors, and Nissan Motors produce electric vehicles domestically, while Ford Motors and others have announced plans to do so, the news outlet noted. But some believe the industry is about to go through a transformation, and quickly. Quote, the current offerings are pretty slim, but the industries are about to unleash an avalanche of new product, and a lot of it built in North America. Kristen Jusek, Vice President of Industry, Labor, and Economics at the Center for Automotive Research, said in a statement with CNBC, quote, just about every U.S. plant is going to have a hybrid or electric product. GSA reported that as of July 2020, only 3,215 of the government's owned cars and trucks were electric vehicles. So what we're talking about with robots being introduced, right? Robots being introduced into the workforce, electric cars, clean energy revolution. To a degree, what we're gradually seeing is the capping of civilization. Like renewable energy, because we won't have forward innovation, we won't really have a lot of progress underneath like a system like this, is we're seeing it get capped. We're seeing everything kind of enter that wheelhouse where everything's the same. It's like global communism. Like this is sustainable development, right? Everybody has to have something that's on net zero. That way, before they make that next jump unilaterally, everybody's on the same field. Like I'll be able to explain it a little bit more in depth in the future, but I hope so far that makes sense. And it's the introduction of things like this, of sustainable development, of the Green New Deal. It's going to sound good up front for the first couple of years, and then that's whenever we're actually going to be hit with the bill of all of this stuff. You got to think, we are a oil and gas nation, a powerhouse, especially out here in New Mexico. We are one of the main ones pushing oil right behind Texas. We're like the third state. I'm saying for us to switch like this is actually pretty dangerous. Like here, let me play this quick clip. We put it up before coming onto the air with you guys. It's of John Kerry basically being like a jerkbag. He talks about how oil and gas workers should be grateful for their position, which is like a slap in the face. A lot of people have lost jobs because of this. But he says oil and gas workers should be grateful, and if anything, they should begin to start learning how to install solar panels. And so this is, again, a part of the Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. So let me go ahead and pull this up for you guys, and then I'll play that quick clip, and then I'll begin to close this segment out for you guys. But it is demonstrative what is taking. John Kerry has a message to oil and gas workers losing their jobs. Learn how to make solar panels. Kerry, Biden's special presidential envoy for climate, made the cruel remarks during a Wednesday press briefing. His remarks come after Biden slashed thousands of jobs within the first 24 hours of setting foot in the White House. Biden has effectively waged war on the energy businesses, promising to stop new oil and gas leases on federal land. And here is John Kerry basically breaking it down.
Watching you both right now, who will hear the message that the takeaway to them is that they are seeing an end to their livelihoods. What do you say to them, particularly those people? President Trump's promise to save their jobs. What is your message to them right now? And also to the industry executives who are listening. Are you putting them on notice today?
Well, we didn't come here to put anybody on notice except to the seriousness of President Biden's and to do what needs to be done to deal with this crisis. And it is a crisis. With respect to those workers, no two people are more in this room are more concerned about it. And the President of the United States has expressed in every comment he has made about climate the need to grow the new jobs that pay better, that are cleaner. That, I mean, you look at the consequences of black lung for a miner, for instance, and measure that against the fastest growing job in the United States before COVID was solar power technician. The same people can do those jobs, but the choice of doing the solar power one now is a better choice. Similarly, you have the second fastest growing job pre-COVID was wind turbine technician. This is happening. 75%, 70% of all the electricity that's come online in the United States in the last few years came from renewables. Not, coal plants have been closing over the last 20 years. So what President Biden wants to do is make sure those folks have better choices, that they have alternatives, that they can be the people who go to work to make the solar panels. They were making them here at home. That is going to be a particular focus of the Build Back Better agenda. And I think that unfortunately workers have been fed a false narrative. No surprise, right, for the last few years. They've been fed the notion that somehow dealing with climate is coming at their expense. No, it's not. What's happening to them is happening because of other market forces already taking place. And what the financiers, the big banks, the asset managers, private investors, venture capital are all discovering is there's a lot of money to be made in the creation of these new jobs in the answers. So whether it's green hydrogen, going to where it is geothermal heat, or whatever it's going to be, those are jobs. The same worker who works in South Carolina today putting together a BMW, which happens to be made there, and is currently an internal combustion engine, can put together a car, but it's electric. So this is not a choice between having jobs, having good jobs, having the quality.
Watching you both right now, who will hear the message.
There you have it. There you have it. Other market forces is what's caused this. Yeah, very interesting. And the politics of it is one thing, because I tell you, I go and look at, I'll put it to you this way. You guys can probably go to our Telegram channel and pull it up. There is a pipeline worker that literally, I'll describe it to you. I don't have the Telegram feed pulled up right now, but I'll describe it to you. What he does is he cracks a beer, takes off his mask. He takes off his mask, cracks a beer, and says, I don't understand how it happened. Lost my job today. Just got a 6-year lease on the, or 6-month plan on the truck. Gonna have to take that back. I don't know if I'll be able to pay my mortgage. And he's like, how did that happen? How did they steal this election? How? It's a very heart-wrenching video that I would definitely recommend you guys go listen to, because it shows the human aspect of somebody being on the pipeline, being on the rig, doing the work one day, and Biden gets in the office, and by the stroke of a pen, his job's gone. Just like that. And now there's a report out saying that the poor will take over a decade to recover from the lockdowns while the rich thrive underneath a rigged economic system. Everything we've been talking to you guys about the entirety of not only this segment, but the previous segment as well. A decade. 10 years. Did it 2030. And that's what John Kerry, Biden's climate envoy, said, that other market forces are taking place. This is the socioeconomic reformation. This is the Great Reset. This is people. This is us moving away from oil and gas to clean energy, the Green New Deal, sustainable development, and more. Let me read this, and then we'll kind of flash through these last two, and I'll start to close out this segment for you guys. This is an article that comes from Planet Free Will. They put this up January 25th. It says that, and what is no secret to any reader of this blog, the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdowns it justified has, in the words of the World Health Organization Special Envoy David Nabarro, made the poor a lot poorer. All the while, billionaires have managed to cash in on their political connectivity and unbalanced exposure to inflating asset markets. In iteration of this, a report titled, quote, Mega Rich Recoup COVID losses in record time, yet billions will live in poverty for at least a decade, released by Oxfam on Monday, reveals that the COVID-19 pandemic, we like to blame the lockdowns here, and its economic ripple effects is negatively affecting just about every country globally at once. In particular, it's going to strike hard at the lower rung of the economic ladder with, as the title suggests, the report claiming that, quote, it could take more than a decade for the world's poorest to recover from the economic impacts of the pandemic. What I've been saying for almost a year now. Oxfam points to a, quote, rigged economic system enabling a super rich elite to amass wealth in the middle of the worst recession since the Great Depression, while billions of people are struggling to make ends meet during these unprecedented times where Western governments have tossed their allegiance to the economic freedom in the trash for the impossible task of using bureaucracy to containing a virus less than a micron in diameter. It says, quote, the recession is over for the richest, the report reads, adding that the world's 10 richest men have seen their combined wealth increase by $500 billion since the pandemic began, more than enough to pay for a COVID-19 vaccine for everyone and to ensure that no one is pushed into poverty by the pandemic. At the same time, the pandemic has ushered in the worst job crisis in over 90 years, with hundreds of millions of people now underemployed or out of work. The rise in inequality and the global economic condition, according to Oxfam, means that it could take at least 14 times longer for the number of people living in poverty to return to pre-pandemic levels than it took for the fortunes of the top 1,000. And that's what they mean by build back better. That's the build back better agenda. Things have been so destroyed by design that you'll have these guardians of inclusive capitalism. You'll have the upper rich folks like Bill Gates and the others redistributing the wealth, coming up with things like universal basic income. Other market forces are taking place. Last year, listeners of the show may remember us talking about the Creo Syndicate, right? A group of ultra rich, wealthy elites coming together to basically push the Green New Deal, the Agenda 21. Other market forces are taking place. Other people are getting pushed out. This is the old world order versus the new world order, a changing of the guard, so to speak. You see. This is going to, again, set the stage for rebellion, driven by malaise, lack of economic opportunity, underfunded educational opportunities, and more. People are going to be pissed with all this stuff. And they're going to be upset because Biden's not going to be able to fix this. If anything, Biden's going to make it worse. Those baristas and those bartenders, they don't have a job to go to anymore because those mom and pop shops that they used to work at and be trendy at are not there. Right? Starbucks might not be hiring. And this may sound facetious, but this is very real. And so the only jobs that will be there are for the government. That's why they're trying to expand it, expand its power, expand its reach. But here, let me read a little bit more of this, and then we'll close out, or get to our next article and close out. Quote, witness the greatest rise in inequality since records began. The deep divide between the rich and the poor is proving as deadly as the virus, said Gabriela Bucher, executive director of Oxfam International. Quote, rigged economies are funneling wealth to a rich elite who are riding out the pandemic in luxury, while those on the front line of the pandemic, shop assistants, healthcare workers, and market vendors, are struggling to pay their bills and put food on the table. As early as April 2020, medical doctors were warning that the SARS-CoV-2 was not a threat which could justify governments bringing entire economies to a standstill, and was no reason to shatter social norms, as doing so would manufacture a health crisis on its own. As you may recall, Dr. Dan Erickson and Dr. Arden C., co-owners of the Accelerated Urgent Care in Bakersfield, California, went viral with their assessment of the virus outbreak when they tried to warn the public that the, quote, 0.03% chance of dying from COVID was no reason for keeping healthy people at home under state edicts. They were usurping unsurprising, censored from YouTube for going against the opinions of the World Health Organization, a trend that would last throughout 2020, as anyone who seemed to strike at the root of the reason for ending the lockdowns or offering therapeutic solutions was erased from the internet's most popular communication channels. As dissenting views were wiped away, the mouthpieces of officialdom shoved the lockdown narrative into the collective consciousness until just about everyone on your Facebook friends list applied the, quote, stay at home, it will save lives filter on their profile pic. And with the continuation of lockdowns came the continuation of government and central bank policy that has done an outstanding job at creating wealth inequality we are seeing accelerated because of COVID. In the United States, where no one is immune to the notion that lockdowns make the poor a lot poorer, the response by governments and central banks has been more debt monetized by money printing. Yeah, we're going into debt. You can't tax your way out of debt. You can't tax your way out of a crisis. And they have bungled this. Like some people would say that this was the 2020 was the year that we were failed, that government collapsed, and that the corporations began to take over. This is the corporatocracy. This is the technocracy. This is the scientific dictatorship. This is why I'm trying to explain how much power the system has accrued in such a short amount of time and how little people see of it at the same time. Right here, the global supply collapse continues to get worse. Shortages of clothing, appliances, food, and other essentials. Yes, because when you shut down everything, when you shut down the first world, the third world starves and dies. And now those shortages are playing catch up, right? The global supply chain is overwhelmed. I talked about it earlier this week on Instagram Live too, how because of some of these defund the police movements, the riots, and everything else that took place in 2020, some truckers weren't going to certain places. So some places didn't get certain food. And this is a very real thing. This is also a reason for me to keep plugging My Patriot Supply, because we brought them a fair amount of business over this last year. You guys have definitely responded, and I'm going to keep spamming that because people need to be prepared. If it's going to take at least a decade for us to try to get back to where we were pre-pandemic status, building back better, we better use what remaining time we have now to stamp in, or at least secure our place in this, because we can always downsize. It's going to be kind of hard trying to outdo and grow this. But here, let me read a little bit of this, and then I'll close out this segment and episode talking about a bill that's being introduced to secede Texas from the United States. This is an article that comes from Natural Blaze. They put this up January 26th. It says that the United States and the world have been suffering under a slow-burning economic depression for 3 decades now. Although the U.S. began inching slowly out of the clutches of the depression underneath the Trump administration's quasi-Americanist tariff policies, COVID mandates, and the government's war on independent businesses, personal finances, and the economy thrust both the United States and the rest of the world straight back into a financial and economic hole. This time, however, that hole is much deeper than even the most negative predictions could have ever foreseen. While PPE loans, stimulus checks, extended unemployment benefits, and a terrified shut-in population, as well as a mainstream media that peddles nothing but 24/7 propaganda, are hiding the real effects of what is taking place, there will soon be no way to cover up the economic fallout from the Great Reset. the global supply chain is overwhelmed. For one example of what is lurking underneath the surface, an article published in the Washington Post entitled, quote, "Pandemic Aftershocks Overwhelm Global Supply Chains" details the fast arriving price increases, inflation, and scarcity. The article states, quote, "1 year after the coronavirus pandemic first disrupted global supply chains by closing Chinese factories, fresh shipping headaches are delaying U.S. farm exports, crimping domestic manufacturing, and threatening higher prices for American consumers. The cost of shipping a container of goods has risen nearly 80% since early November and has nearly tripled over the past year, according to the Freightos Baltic Index. The increase reflects dramatic shifts in consumption during the pandemic as consumers redirect money they once spent at restaurants or movie theaters to purchase the record amount of imported clothing, computers, furniture, and other goods. That abrupt and unprecedented spending shift has upended long-standing trade patterns, causing bottlenecks from the gates of Chinese factories to the doorsteps of U.S. homes. I think that's some of what we're seeing with the Wall Street AME or AMC GameStop thing right there, where you have basically people on Reddit practicing group economics and taking it to some of these financial powerhouses. But getting back into this, it says, in other words, money that was once spent on luxuries such as eating out or even going to the movies, etc., is now being spent on necessities. The price of everything will continue to rise. This is, of course, due to the fact that many good jobs are sent overseas before the COVID mandates took hold, but also because the lockdowns and the fear-mongering of media outlets have driven many of the businesses that were left into extinction. Unemployed people and business owners who no longer own their businesses are now faced with the rising costs for items they need and have no money left over for the items that they want. Something that has driven many more people to steal food and other necessities in an alarming trend, which we've talked about. Yes, because of the pandemic and everything else that was just listed right there, crime is skyrocketing, thefts are skyrocketing, especially from grocery stores and more. This is another reason why they're doing bread lines and so on and so forth. But things are crazy. It says that the article continues. Glimmers of sticker shock are starting to vex corporate planners. The cost of imported industrial supplies jumped 4.2% in December and up 27% since April's pandemic low, with manufacturers complaining of shortages of materials such as steel. Shipping issues are affecting familiar brand names such as The Gap, where an executive recently told investors that, quote, port issues were hamstringing operations. At WD-40, higher freight and warehousing costs dented profit margins last quarter. Jay Rimbolt, the chief financial officer, told investors this month. Bang & Olufsen, a maker of music systems and televisions, said it had resorted to more expensive air freight to compensate for a lack of seaborne operations. Quote, "These challenges have put inflationary cost pressures on our and many businesses, and as the market is anticipating, will put further inflationary pressure on transportation rates in 2021, said Shelley Simpson, chief commercial officer for J.B. Hunt Transport Services, on a recent earnings call. So, basically what they're saying is because of COVID-19, the supply chain is breaking. Supply chain is breaking. There's going to be inflation. There's going to be problems. You're going to have certain items. The market is changing. Holy crap, watch out. And all these things are happening simultaneously as Biden gets into office. And Biden, who has a history of achieving nothing, especially economically, is going to screw the pooch. It is going to be a crazy couple of years. Does Kamala seem like she has business sense? And I'm not trying to be like a jerk. I'm being honest, because you got to think about where we are going and what we have to be informed on, right? Something tells me, because last year we became immunologists, biologists, virologists, and things like this. Something tells me this year that we're all going to become like economists, business people, and experts in this field, because we're going to have to. Stimulating our pension funds, like it's going to be crazy, dude. All of this stuff is going to be crazy. But to get into this final article so I can go ahead and close this episode out for you guys. Something I think I'll talk more about either Tuesday or even next week, because I'm sure this will go viral over time. Right here, Texas representative introduces a bill that would let residents vote on seceding from the U.S. An article by Cassandra Fairbanks of the Gateway Pundit. They put this up January 26th. And here it is. The Texas Independence Referendum Act, HB 1359. Crazy. So when we talk about global realignment, we see all these things taking place on the global geopolitical scale, right? Other nations getting involved with the Build Back Better agenda, people getting on board with global agendas. You have things like this. And then you have things like this. Texas seceding from the United States. And I thoroughly think that other people are going to begin to pick this up. I'm going to read a little bit of this, and then I'm going to get into the secession theory PDF that is attached to this episode. You guys can find it. It is also on our Telegram channel. And it says right here, Texas State Representative Kyle Biederman introduced a bill on Tuesday that would allow Texans to vote on seceding from the U.S. House Bill 1359, otherwise known as the Texas Independence Referendum Act, would let residents vote on if Texas legislature should create a joint interim committee to create a plan for independence for the state. So literally a declaration of independence is being created in this time frame, because I'm sure they're going to get a fair amount of people that are actually down to secede from the United States, and then they're going to come up with their own plan for independence of the state. Very impressive. It says in a press release provided to the Gateway Pundit, the Texas Nationalist Movement explained that, quote, the bill would give Texans an opportunity to head to the polls in November of 2021 and start the process of reasserting our status as an independent nation. If the people vote in favor, the bill provides for the establishment of a committee to begin working on a transitional plan which would address all the issues related to decoupling from the federal government, quote, or end quote. It says Texas Nationalist Movement President Daniel Miller added that, quote, this bill is simply to put the question to the people of Texas. Even if legislators don't personally support Texas, at a minimum, they should support your right to publicly debate and vote on the issue. Your representatives either believe that you are smart and responsible enough to make this decision, or they believe that they know what's best for you, regardless of what you think. There is no middle ground. Quote, the people of Texas are sick and tired of living under 180,000 pages of federal laws administered by 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats, said Miller. At the end of the day, the best people to govern Texas are Texans, and this vote will give us that chance. Representative Biederman said that the national government is failing Texans and they should be allowed to vote on leaving the union. Quote, this act simply lets Texans vote through a referendum. This decision is too big to be monopolized solely by the power brokers in our capital. We need to let Texans' voices be heard. Voters of all political persuasions in Texas can agree on one thing. Washington, D.C. and has been broken, Biederman said in a statement. Quote, our national government continuously fails our working families, seniors, taxpayers, veterans, and small business owners. For decades, our federal government has eroded the promises of America and our individual liberties. It is now time for the people of Texas, time that the people of Texas are allowed the right to decide our own future. This is not a left or a right political issue. This is simply about allowing Texans the right to vote. And there you have it. I don't think there's really much else that can be said other than that we are now in a time frame to where people are going to begin to replicate this movement, replicate the idea of seceding from the Union. You see, because it's what's necessary. If drastic things like this are having to take place because the people are not being listened to. You see. And so the final little thing I want to pull up for you guys, audio listeners, you guys can't see it. I described it earlier, but it is the secession theory PDF. It will be attached. You guys can find it in the description bar below. I just kind of want to talk about some of the districts that they have. These aren't FEMA districts. You know, this is somebody else's theory. But they have the red the Red Mississippi River Valley area, which basically contains all of Central America, Central Northern America, and a little bit of Canada. You have the Yellow Free West, which is New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, and Nevada. You also have Orange, the Old South. Some of the East Coast. You've got Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. Right? You've got. I would definitely recommend you guys to check it out because it is really, really important. And I'll talk more about it in the coming days because this is a massive movement. This is not something that I don't think is going to go away for any time soon. You know, I think everything we've talked about here on the show is really setting a stage for our future. Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and so on. You know, the idea is to keep people dependent upon the system, and some of the stuff we're talking about right now is too much empowerment. You see. But we'll see, you know, who can really say what the future has in store for us, because so far, this is crazy. We are truly in a time of historic proportions. You know. And so to begin to close this episode out for you guys, this is the new format. This is how we're doing things. We have to figure out how to rapidly acquire this information, break it down, represent it to you in an orderly fashion, but at the same time explaining what is happening. This is the future. This is the work. This is history. And this is how it gets done. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the fog of war, COVID resistance, and global realignment. Yep. However, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I really have for you guys and gals. I know, a very complex presentation, but it's all designed to give you that deep and comprehensive view of what's going on. You know, several years into this, you would think I kind of have an understanding as to what's going on. I'm still learning new stuff every day. That's why I try to share it in each and every way. As you saw, we had mixed both Telegram and Instagram because they are becoming very useful assets to the type of work we're doing. All the information that I mentioned in this episode, PDFs, the studies, the videos, the documents, the links, you can find all that and more in the episode article in the link in the description bar below. And remember, guys and gals, stay vigilant. Expose lies and share truth. This is Noise Era, Freedom Faction, out.
Over.